7 o'clock.
Okay, folks, we're on record. And Jeff, if you're ready, we're ready to start.
We are all set. Go right ahead.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call to order the Committee of Infrastructure for a public hearing being today, December 8, 2021. Public hearing were conducted by the Committee of Infrastructure on Wednesday, December 8, 2021 at 7 p.m. in the automatic chamber. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alderman at Large, Michael B. O'Brien.
Present.
Alderman at Large, Thomas Lopez is not here. Alderman Jan Schmidt. Alderman Ernest Jetty.
Here.
And Alderman David C. Tenza here. Mr. Chairman, we have 3 in attendance. It looks like also online is Alderwoman Clee.
And Alderman Dowd. I see. Okay. All right. First thing that's going to be discussed this evening is the public hearing on the petitions for street acceptance of Menendez Way and Shore Drive. Is Mr. Dan Hudson with us?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Hudson, could you just give us a brief overview of the street acceptance? I know we do this rarely nowadays. At one time, this was a going thing, but as the city gets built up, this is a rare thing. So could you explain it to us, please?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Dan Hudson, City Engineer. As streets are constructed through the subdivision process, an application will come in for a development, be reviewed by planning board, approved, makes its way out to construction. Residents get built, streets get built, and the intention always is that to become public streets. So during that process, they'll be inspected by our engineers and inspectors. But at the culmination of all that, once all the work is complete, a petition is submitted for acceptance of the street as a public street. So that's what's before us tonight on these two streets, Minto Way and Shore Drive. So as subject tonight is a section of Shore Drive that runs from Heidi Lane to West Hall Street, and then Minto Way, which is basically a cul-de-sac. We have properly noticed this hearing. This is to provide an opportunity for the public, any member of the public, but also residents of the street to voice any concerns or comments they may have in the city considering accepting these streets as public streets. Once they are accepted as public streets, the city takes over full responsibility for them in terms of long-term maintenance and repairs and those sorts of things. We take over, all aspects of the street, the sewer, the drain, lighting, everything within the right-of-way has been defined through that subdivision process. So with that, this meeting was noticed, mailings went out to residents of the street. So I don't know how many we have in attendance specific to this item, but that's what I have to offer, I guess, and I'd welcome any comments, questions, any of that sort of thing.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Are there any questions for any members of the committee? Being only 3, but we do have enough for a quorum, so therefore no questions. We'll now move to petitions for street acceptance and the public hearing. At this time, I will take testimony in favor. Anybody that wishes to speak, step forward to the microphone at the rail. We'll give you 3 minutes to speak. And so seeing that, any testimony in favor? Seeing none, I'll close the testimony in favor and open up testimony in opposition.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is Brad Westgate. I'm on Zoom and raised my hand, but
okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Westgate, we didn't see you on Zoom, but yes, I'll recognize you. You're going to speak in testimony in favor?
Yes, sir.
Okay, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, members of the committee. My name is Brad Westgate. I'm a lawyer with Weiner & Bennett, 111 Concord Street in Nashua, representing Edgestone Properties, Inc., the petitioner on these two petitions for street acceptance. Dave Petropoulos of Edgestone is also on Zoom. You'll see him appearing on the screen. Just wanted to speak briefly, Mr. Chairman. Edgestone developed this residential subdivision on Shore Drive and Minter Way. It's on the northerly side of West Hollis Street, as I suspect the committee members are aware. The project was completed in 2019 when the last homes were sold and finished. Road was finished at that time as well. And it's in order that the Shore Drive section that Mr. Hudson described and Minter Way be accepted by the city in the ordinary course. Shore Drive is the main road, the main extension of original Shore Drive that was constructed by Edgestone. Minter Way is a small cul-de-sac off of that new section of Shore Drive. So in mid-2021 this year, we filed the petitions of street acceptance. They went through the standard process, which has been on the books for a good number of years for the city, including the city engineer's review and approval of the petition. In effect, the city engineer makes certain that the plans that are submitted with the application that depict the layout of the street, as well as the profiles, are accurate and acceptable, and also that the street was built in accordance with the approved plan. And as you'll notice on the petition, the city engineer has signed off on both of those facts. Of course, the city undertook inspections prior to the city engineer being able to approve or sign off on the petitions. One other step in this process is Corporation Counsel's involvement. Petitions for street acceptance require an attorney's opinion, which I prepared, indicating that Edgestone effectively had the authority to seek these petitions for street acceptance. Corporation Counsel reviewed that opinion, provided a memorandum to both the full Board of Aldermen and this committee to the effect that the opinion that I prepared was acceptable, and Corporation Counsel had no further comment. So I think we followed the process. The appropriate reviews by the city officials have been undertaken, and we would respectfully request that this committee recommend full board approval of these two petitions for street acceptance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank you, sir. The clerk will also note, and for the transcriber for the record, we have been joined by Alderman Tom Lopez, and we're also joined by Alderman Ben Clemens is also in attendance. Thank you. The time of arrival was 7:05. Okay, we also have somebody, Richard Wesley in the wings. Mr. Wesley.
Yes, I'm actually, I have questions and concerns for not in favor of the street approval and acceptance, and I can wait until you hit that stage.
Okay, if you want to wait, I'll call it within the next 30 seconds, okay?
Thank you. Thank you,
All
sir.
right, thank you. Any other testimony in favor? Seeing none, I'll close the testimony in favor and open it up to testimony in opposition. I'll give first speaking rights to the chamber. Anybody in the chamber want to rise and speak in testimony in opposition? Seeing none. Mr. Wesley, I recognize you.
Thank you, sir. As a property owner at 25 Heidi Lane, I have questions and concerns regarding acceptance of the streets, regarding my driveways that I have at that intersection of Heidi and Shore Drive. I've raised this question and concerns many a times with the board and have yet to get a resolution on it, but my driveways with the street acceptance being there are now both I only have one driveway is within 10 feet of the corner of Shore Drive and Heidi Lane, which concerns me now with property selling and safety pulling out of my driveway being that close on that end of the roadway. I have brought this to the attention. I have tried to get a resolution. I do have another section of driveway that is not cut out to the road that I would like to get cut out to be able to safely pull into my driveway and out of my driveway. And I need to figure out how I can do that safely. I don't have a problem with Shore Drive. I think it's great, but I need some kind of leniency on access to my house for my driveway now that Shore Drive has been extended.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Wesley. Yeah, exactly what board did you bring your concerns up to, sir?
I believe it was the planning board. I've met with multiple members down in the office to avail that I have not gotten any resolution on this as of yet. And if I can, if you want me to look that up, I can definitely go and do that.
No, not necessary, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Hudson, is there any, do you see any concerns or any negotiations that you could answer Mr. Wesley's questions? Not necessarily now, but if he were to contact you through the proper channels, can you help him work through his particular issues? I imagine he must need a curb cut and needs directions to do such. So I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Hudson.
Sure, thank you. Yes, unfortunately, this is the first time I'm hearing of this. I do not question that he's reached out to people, but the appropriate thing to do would be to reach out to the engineering department, and then we can review that. We're the ones that permit driveways. Corner lots are allowed to have multiple driveways, but the total, there's limits on the total driveway width that you can have. So we'll have to work through those specifics with Mr. Wesley. But yeah, I mean, as has been stated, the road's been finished, I guess, for a couple of years. So I'm curious if that has been a problem or just if it's a concern. But at any rate, Mr. Wesley can reach out to the engineering department. I'll be happy to look into that in more detail and see what can be done.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Mr. Hudson, do you have off the top of your head the number that Mr. Wesley can contact?
Sure. It is 589-3120. That's our main number.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hudson. All right, Mr. Wesley?
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Anybody else with testimony in opposition? Seeing none, open up to part two, testimony in favor. Anybody in the chamber wants to come forward and offer testimony in favor that hasn't already spoken? Seeing none, I'll close the testimony in favor and open up re-testimony in opposition. Anybody in the chamber? Seeing none and nobody online, I will close the testimony in opposition. Mr. Clerk, do you have a motion to adjourn?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
Okay, the motion's to adjourn. Committee members that are present are in the chamber. We have no committee members on Zoom, so I'll call it by voice vote. All those in favor to adjourn signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed, seeing none. We'll close the hearing at 7:13 p.m. All right, folks, don't go anywhere. Same bad time, same bad channel. We're going right in to the Committee of Infrastructure meeting. I will call the Committee of Infrastructure to order. Wednesday, December 8th, 2021 at 7:14 p.m. in the automatic chamber and via Zoom teleconference. To access Zoom, please refer to the agenda on the city's website for the meeting link. I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Alderman Thomas Lopez.
Here.
Alderman Jan Schmidt. Alderman Ernest Jetty.
Here.
Alderman at Large Dave Tenza is here, and Alderman at Large Michael O'Brien.
Present.
We have 4 members in attendance and 1 not in attendance.
Okay. Also in attendance is Alderman Ben Clemens and Alderman Clee and City Engineer Dan Hudson and Director Cummings is also in attendance. I think we got everybody? Okay. I will now open up the the floor for public comment. Anybody wishing to
Also
have
Alderman
public?
Dowd.
Pardon?
Also Alderman Dowd.
Alderman Dowd, okay, thank you. Alderman Dowd's also here. All right, open up a public comment, anybody? Okay. Yes, come up to the mic, your name, your address, and to remind you, you have a 3-minute limit, please.
Okay, let me get situated first before you put me in the clock. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is, I'm County Commissioner Mike Susi, representing the District of Nashua, Pelham, Litchfield, and Hudson, and I live at 3 Roseanne Circle. And I'm here to talk against the ordinance in relation to the barriers. I've read the ordinance, and, you know, where it talks about the pandemic for the reason why we did the restaurants seating, yeah, well, it was tolerated because it was needed, but it's no longer needed. And what really, really concerns me the most about this is the city clerk is directed to not to codify this ordinance in the National Revised Ordinances, but to designate it as a COVID-19 emergency. Are you kidding me? An emergency, has anybody looked up the definition of an emergency? If this was really an emergency, it wouldn't be just 1/4 mile strip of Main Street. It would encompass all of Amherst Street, Daniel Webster Highway, every place else. This is not an emergency. The governor has not declared an emergency. CDC hasn't, nor has the Department of Health. Okay, I hope you don't declare this as an emergency because it's a false flag. It really is. Let's talk about what this really is. It's about the master plan, okay? I'm not here to say the master plan is bad because there's a lot of good stuff in there, but this is about the master plan. And we read the master plan on page 70, the temporary outdoor seating and public realm improvements made along Main Street while initially pursued to promote the health and safety of the community during the COVID-19 pandemic now presents the community with a vision of a new downtown. Despite the logistical hurdles of setting these changes up in a temporary look and feel of Jersey barriers, the increased option of outdoor seating and reclamation of significant slice of the street away from purely automatic traffic has shown that a dramatic rethinking of the public realm can work in Nashua. Many concerns brought up hypothetically related to this kind of public realm intervention, reduced parking availability, which is true, access to the sidewalk, negative effects in businesses have not materialized. Yeah, it's materialized. And they have been significantly less dramatic. I think you're gonna hear from people today that it's very, very dramatic. They talk about that these improvements should be made permanent and even expanded as the city looks towards a broader reinvigoration of the downtown business. So if you're gonna do this, let's call it for what it is and be transparent, honest, and do it with integrity, and don't put up a false flag of COVID-19. If it's an emergency every place. Okay, so we have to have integrity when we do something like that. My recommendation, first of all, would be, don't do it. Don't do this. It's not needed. Number two, if you're going to do it with honesty, integrity, amend this legislation and take out that COVID-19. And finally, there's a new board coming on. Let the new board weigh in on that. You can just let this go away. The new board will weigh in on this. My personal feeling, if it does go through, thank you on the police commission thing. We won that 2-1. If I put a ballot question together again, we'll win this 3-1. I don't know where you're getting your study on people wanting this, but from my personal pulse of the city, of talking with people, you would lose this on a ballot question 3-1. So I would just say, Mayor Donchis, he cannot afford to lose another ballot question in the embarrassing way that he lost the other one.
You are over the 3 minutes, though.
Oh, okay, well, I thank you for that.
And the fair warning, we're breaking in a new clerk.
Okay, well, the
So
clerk
you
didn't
did
tell
not
me,
get-
and you know me, I'll talk
Yeah,
all day if I
know,
can.
Mr.
Okay.
Susi. In all fairness, we did not give you the traditional 30-second warning, but we're
I get
getting
30
better at
seconds
this. So, thank you.
Okay.
I'll have to terminate. Thank you, Mr. Susi.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can we just clarify that's what that light is for? It's
Yes.
green when you're good, it's yellow
Yeah,
when
but
you're-
Alderman Lopez, if the clerk or I forget to see the 30-second. When you see the yellow light, it's much like the traffic light. Green is go. The yellow light basically means you hit the 30-second and the red is the stop. So thank you. Thank you, Alderman Lopez. Anybody else for public comment? Yes, we have somebody coming up. Please give your name and your address, please. And again, 3 minutes.
Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. This pandemic politic game has to stop. We don't have a pandemic anymore. We have an endemic. And we're going to live with this for forever. This strain and variants and changes is going to be here with us. And that's just the way it is. I think we know what we have to do, and I think we're doing it. And I was at the Board of Health meeting this afternoon, and they are not invoking a mask policy at this point in Nashua. So we're just going along doing what we have to do. I received a copy of this ordinance last week, and the copy I received was signed by Celia Leonard on November 7th. And the sponsor of it was Mayor Donchis. The mayor has sent out a personal email, once again, using his personal email account to get people to back this barrier issue. I don't like the personal politics he engages with using his email address. This is shades of the police commissioner issue again. And he notes in this personal email that there are 5 aldermen that are supporting this, who were not signed on this legislation at all. And I'd like to know when you all put yourselves on it. Lori Wilshire, Mike O'Brien, Ben Clemens, Brandon Laws, and Skip Cleaver. I'm unaware that this has come to the board to have people's names put on it to bring it forward, because they were not on the copy I received last week. There are plenty of businesses that are opposed to this, and I've been aware of it for over 3 months. I don't know why the legislation signed by Celia Leonard on the 7th did not take into account these barrier issues and the flexibility and the changes that some blocks and people want to see incorporated. You're showing me pictures of barriers everywhere, and you've written this ordinance such that the mayor can add more barriers at his pleasure. I don't want to see that happen. And what happened to safety in this city? That's supposed to be number one. We have a fire department, we have a police department, and access down those roads and access to the hospital is significant. And last night I heard in the Riverfront project that work will involve closing at times Factory and Water Street to do renovations and change the traffic flow. How exactly is that going to work with barriers running down Main Street? You know, the mayor has a vision here, and it's his personal vision, and he's not transparent with the people on what he wants to do. I was at the parking meeting.
30 seconds.
Paul Shea jumped on and started speaking in code, very unclear, about the hardscaping to the curb that was going to exist. He was actually talking about barriers, but couldn't bring himself to say the word barriers. We need straightforward answers. This should be tabled. And if it's not tabled, I'll be right there with Mr. Susi, pushing a ballot question to make certain this doesn't happen. This has not been handled correctly, and this is not the way to handle business in Nashua. Thank you.
It's going to be a long meeting, potentially. We were here last night to 10:30. And although I asked you to curb your enthusiasm, although the previous speaker was well-spoken, but it does delay the time until I can get another speaker up here. So if I'm asking for the courtesy of no applauding, and I thank you for complying. Anybody else want to come forward for comment?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. It's Michael Buckley. I live at Toddy Brook Road in Hollis, but I do own 2 restaurants in downtown Nashua, Surf and MT's Loco. And I would just like to say, I definitely understand. I hear from all the different business people downtown. I'm a fixture there. I talk to a lot of people, and I certainly understand the frustration. So I hear their comments, I hear their frustration, but I've also heard positive as well from retailers. I hear both. I'm just here to say that there is other solutions, and I just want to present some options. You know, there is the option of changing the model a little bit, letting the free market decide. And it could have been done this year, but I think that people were just said, hey, we're gonna carry it over, and it never really got examined to the level that maybe people would look at it and say, how can we do this better or differently? I think there is an opportunity to say, can we do a hybrid model? I think when we did it the first year, it was a huge success. It helped the restaurants immensely, and we certainly are grateful for that. And with that, people said, hey, we love the vibrance that it brings to the downtown. And I think that it does, and I think it makes the downtown a nicer place to be. So is there an opportunity to say, if you did it different, if you attached a fee to the permitting, a fee that was expensive enough that it would keep the people that weren't really utilizing it to say, hey, I don't want to spend the money, but it would take the people that really do gain from it and utilize it to its max, are willing to spend the money. I think you would have seen that if you had done something like that this year, you probably would have freed up half the parking spaces. And I understand it's very frustrating to give up the parking spaces to only see, there was a number of businesses that did not use them. And it even frustrated me, because I lose parking too. You know, if it's gonna happen, we wanna do it right. So I'm here to say, you know, maybe there's an opportunity to look at it differently, look at a hybrid model where, I don't know if it's by linear feet or by the amount of seats or whatever it is, but you attach a fee. And that fee will be significant enough to help defer the cost of the barriers, so it's not always just, you know, the people of the city taking the brunt, that if you really want it, you'll be willing to pony up the money for it. And like I said, I think there was probably 6 or 7 businesses downtown this year that didn't really use it very well, that probably wouldn't have spent the money if they were forced to do that to get a permit. I think that would certainly create a more hybrid system that would make it a little more bearable for the retailers downtown, that would free up at least half of their parking, and the city would receive funds for the permitting. And maybe you would somehow achieve your vibrancy, especially with the Performing Arts Center coming online, and still have a workable situation for the retailers downtown. It's something I'd be willing to, you know, work with a board or a committee on, trying to figure out what the right way to do it is, or not. But it's just something I wanted to put out there as an alternative. So that's about all I wanted to say. All right?
Very good, thank you, Mr. Buckley. Open up the microphone again to anybody who would like to speak. Can you give your name and address in 3 minutes, please?
Yeah, I'm Casey Darrell. I don't live here in Nashua, but I do own a business in building downtown. I own Darrell's Music Hall. I'm very much against the barriers. I understand where Michael's coming from, where it could be used in some areas. I don't see them being used the way they really should have been either. Half the time they were empty. You're taking up close to 90% of the parking in downtown, causing a traffic jam. Down the 2 lanes was crazy. I mean, I saw accidents, people road rage. It's amazing how bad it was. And then the kids are also on the sidewalks with their bikes and the scooters and everything else, which is illegal, I understand. And they're constantly doing it. It's a danger. There'll be more of it. And I see that the master plan also, this is more of a test for the master plan, maybe. Maybe that's what the mayor has in mind. I don't feel as though the mayor really knows the people downtown. I mean, I've met the mayor once, and I had to go up and meet him. I've been here for 38 years. So it's just, the whole city is, I don't know, not thinking right, in my opinion. But I do agree with Michael, you do need some of that area. But a lot of these people are willing to give up their front of their retail spot at night. You can put more tables out then. So that's about all I've got to say, but I'm totally against the barriers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Again, open up the microphone for anybody with a public comment. Again, state your name, address, and 3 minutes, please.
My name is Gloria Henry. I live at 3 Coleridge Road, Ward 8. My husband and I own Gloria's Possibilities at 100 Main Street.
Ma'am?
Yes.
For you, yeah, there you go. Hopefully it does adjust. Thank you, ma'am.
Gloria's Possibilities is a home decor and gift shop. We relocated to this location in November 2020. Prior to that, we were located at the old Chandler Library House for over 8 years. We relocated to reduce our overhead and survive during the peak of COVID. During the last 20 months, we have been working nonstop to keep our business thriving. The second year of COVID, the second year of barriers has been an impediment to our business. We do not support continuing the Jersey barriers for another 3 years. As a 39-year resident of Nashua, I've never seen such chaos on Main Street. The barriers are a logistical quagmire to the ebb and flow of commerce. Customers constantly complain about the lack of parking, traffic congestion, and the unattractiveness of the barriers. We see hundreds of customers each week, and not one customer has ever supported having the barriers for the second year. We believe the Main Street restaurants, retailers, professionals, and service-based businesses should all be allowed to thrive and not disproportionately given special benefits. The barriers have definitely favored the restaurants, and that was justified the first year. There's no longer a need for such inequity. Most seats are underutilized during the day, and that doesn't justify having barriers for 24 hours a day. And I think the restaurants can also make reasonable outdoor seating arrangements with local retailers. They can use their own seating blueprint on the sidewalks, and I would graciously allow people to use the front of our retail store.
30 seconds.
Okay. Furthermore, the city should not do anything that impedes the desire of local customers and out-of-area customers to shop downtown Nashua. Therefore, we believe that it's imperative that the barriers be rescinded, the ordinance be rescinded. Thank you. It's hard to speak.
Thank you. Again, anybody want to come up for public comment? Please give your name, your address, and 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Ruth Boland. I live in Merrimack, but I own the League of New Hampshire Craftsman Gallery at 98 Main Street. I am not in favor of continuing to restrict parking on Main Street. Going forward, outdoor dining should continue, but just using the sidewalks as has been done in prior years. During the day, the outdoor dining has not been used much this year. The tables are empty during the day. So when the retail and other non-restaurant businesses are open, there's no parking on Main Street. Yet there are not additional people coming downtown during business hours. All that valuable real estate sits empty. A single lane in each direction might slow down traffic on Main Street, which might increase safety and allow visitors to view downtown's offerings more comfortably. Unfortunately, the way the barriers have been painted, all attention is drawn to them, but not in a good way, kind of like looking at a car wreck. If used in the future, the barriers should be repainted to blend in, not to grab attention, create an unpleasant atmosphere, and cause distracted driving. Many shoppers have been avoiding downtown. I know this because they mention it when they finally do come in. How many purchases did they make at the mall or online while they were avoiding downtown? Some people will call us and have us shipped to them, and they live in Nashua. Were they to come in and browse, they might buy more than just the one thing they had us ship. And they might visit more downtown businesses while they were here. They might even go out to lunch. Parking must be restored to at least parts of Main Street. At a minimum, each block should have some handicap parking. The other day, 2 friends were in my gallery, one with a walker. She became fatigued, so I got her a chair. A conversation then ensued, trying to figure out how to get her to her car. In the end, I brought the driver outside and suggested where she could pull over. She would have to park illegally because the 15-minute curbside pickup spot was not restored to my block this year. She headed out for her car. I walked the friend out the front door of my gallery, bringing a chair so she could rest, then walked her to the spot where she was going to be picked up, again bringing the chair so she could sit and wait. She had to be there before the driver since there was nowhere legal for the driver to pull over. This was a frustrating experience for all. If the barriers are restored in the future, I request they be removed earlier. My gallery has only one busy season each year, and that is during the holidays. People begin their holiday shopping in October. Leaving the barriers up into
30
November
seconds.
is discouraging and frankly damaging to my business. Now that the barriers are removed, the only way to park on my block is to use a parking app. People are confused and frustrated and frankly upset. Every day, multiple people come in and do not know what they're supposed to do. Making an app be the only way to pay for parking is a mistake. At a minimum, this experiment should have been communicated and certainly not started during the holiday shopping season. I know that's off topic, but
Time.
to summarize, I'm not in favor of approving the barriers for the next 3 years, although I did like Mr. Buckley's suggestion.
Thank you, ma'am. Again, the microphone is open. You have, state your name and address in 3 minutes, please.
Billy Focus, 185 Main Street. I'm the owner of Martha's Exchange. I'd like to echo a lot of Michael's previous statements that he said. I think it has been good. I've also spoken to Gary Wingate at Wingate. I think one of the biggest things we need here is compromise. We've, not just for restaurants, we have to make sure that our fellow shops downtown also have access to letting their customers in. I agree with what they've said, meaning I did see a lot of empty spaces this year. I'm willing to concede spots. I think with restructuring this in a way that reduces some of the outdoor seating and also by that point gives more parking to the retailers in downtown would be a nice compromise. So the other thing, the woman who just spoke, I agree. I think March 15th through November 15th is too long. Season starts April 15th, maybe October 15th. Once the weather's cooler, you obviously see much less traffic or people sitting outside. Again, I liked Michael's idea, about a fee. I also think that we really should just take a look downtown and say who was using what space and try to maybe, again, compromise, and that's the key word here. Compromise so that it's a win-win situation for everybody. But I am in the favor of the barriers, and I would like to see that continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, the microphone is open. Thank you. Welcome. Please state your name, address, and 3 minutes, please.
Yep, Kathy Carden with Carden Jewelers. Address is 125 Main, or my home address is 12 Woodland, both in Nashua. I have to say that I think we're missing some of the point here, and I think we have a gentleman from the fire department also that is here, whether he's going to speak or not. And I agree with Billy and Michael to some degree, but it seems like we should be able to expand on the sidewalk, not into the street. I think we've had a good mix of people being creative, and again, there's been a lot of space that wasn't used. And I agree with some of my fellow shopkeepers that the parking has been atrocious for our seniors and handicapped. And this city was built on some of these people that we're now pushing away from coming downtown. And these are people that have been giving our business, and many of them, a decent amount of business for years. So in that respect, I do feel the compromise is needed, but I think that and Mr. Wingate and I have had this conversation, we're willing to give up our storefronts for tables, umbrellas, flower pots, whatever, to keep it on the sidewalk. Let's work as a team. I mean, half of us grew up here in Nashua, and more than half, and have been in these businesses for years. Let's compromise, as Billy said and as Michael said, but let's keep it on the sidewalk. Let's leave the lanes open for the, you know, the ambulances, the fire trucks, all of those things that I feel that all it's gonna take at some point is us to have someone not make it to one of our hospitals in an ambulance and say, gee whiz, you know, we had to have tables and umbrellas out there. Let's try and move it back, scale it back, and I think we can compromise and work as a team. And I think that would be something, I think the majority of the people here are willing to work together. I know I am, so. That's it, thank you.
Thank you. All right, again. Thank you. Can you state your name, address, and 3 minutes, please?
Sure. Richard Landon. My address is McGrath Road in Pelham. My office is here in Nashua, and I own 2 mixed-use buildings on Main Street where the barriers are. So I have about 9 storefront tenants with a mixture of restaurants, banks, and retailers. So it's, you know, I've kind of seen it on both sides. So I've, you know, talked to some of them, but I'm also on the Downtown Improvement Committee, and I'm not speaking for them tonight, but I've been on that committee since its inception and was on the Service Advisory Committee before that. And I just look back, there was a lot of discussion even 10, 12 years ago with the prior economic director, Tom Gallegani, and then James Veo, who worked in the department, about how we've got to do something to slow down traffic on Main Street, to narrow Main Street. There was discussions then about eliminating 2 lanes on Main Street. And it was nothing to do with about barriers or outside dining. It was, we can't have Main Street continue to be a thoroughfare that people are going 30 and 40 miles an hour, which is actually, in my opinion at least, and I'm no planner, a lot more unsafe than it is with the traffic the way it is today with the barriers. There's a lot more traffic, there's a little more traffic congestion, but the traffic has definitely slowed down. And again, there's been talk for at least, and since these committees in downtown have been together, about making changes to do just that and make it a more friendly downtown and more walkable downtown. And that's been discussed, and I'm no planner, but that's been discussed for a long time. This kind of happened because of the pandemic. So it was kind of forced to happen, and it worked. I don't think continuing this has anything to do with COVID whatsoever. This is not a COVID-related, in my opinion, extension or to do this for the next 3 years or forever. I think it's what is best for the vibrancy of downtown. But yes, I do agree with some of the things that was said about there needs to be some changes. I also agree that it probably starts too early and ends too late. There's no need to start in March and end in November. So starting a little later, ending earlier, and doing some tweaking on some of the parking to make it a little more available. And again, you know, Downtown Improvement Committee have their budget based on parking revenue. So believe me, I'd love to see the more parking meters open, the better for that reason. But again, I think it's all about what is going to be best for downtown and the vibrancy and drawing people downtown. And if it's slowing traffic down,
30 seconds.
that's, you know, I don't think that's a bad thing to do. But there is definitely some tweaking and some compromising need to be made. But in general, I am in for the barriers. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to remind good friends online, I do see I have one hand raised, but at this point I'm trying to accommodate the people in the chamber. I do see a second hand has gone up, but I'll call anybody in the chamber that wants to offer public comment. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and address, and 3 minutes, please.
So I'm Gary Wingate, 15 Sherman Street in Nashua, and I'm here tonight to express that I approve for outdoor dining. but I also expressed that I disapprove the Jersey barriers. I am for returning to the pre-COVID format of which the restaurants would, number one, have tables and chairs outside along the boundaries of their restaurant storefronts. Number two, to the prior pre-COVID widening of the sidewalks, which give plenty of room for pedestrian traffic. Number three, keeping the parking spaces, including spaces for the disabled, for customers to park and not to be crowded out by the barriers. And four, by returning to the normalcy of the 4 lanes of traffic. Tonight, I represent the customers of downtown businesses for both restaurants and non-restaurants. They're extremely discouraged with the barriers blocking their parking for access to the businesses that they want to patronize. I represent the firefighters, the policemen, and the emergency medical drivers being slowed down, sometimes to a halt, where every second counts, getting through downtown with the barriers, impeding their lanes for quick access. Many are very against the barricades, but claim that they can't express their sentiments because they're hired by the city. I represent the managers of Enterprise Bank and Bank of America, who I have visited with several times, that they are against the barriers which impede the customer parking, especially for their older and disabled patrons. They both wanted to participate live here tonight and/or write their no more barrier sentiments to the Infrastructure Committee and the aldermen, but they were told by upper management to stick to their policy and refrain. I represent the restaurants, both owners and general managers, who will admit that they're getting special treatment from the city to be allowed to put tables and chairs on the sidewalks and parking spaces which belong to the citizens that pay their taxes. They admit if they were in our shoes, they would be against the barricades and the negative ramifications that they create. They admit in the 8 months the barriers were up, they would probably use the table and the parking spaces no more than 15 times, usually on a summer Friday or Saturday night. And the most significant admission that even in a perfect world where their indoor dining is full, their outdoor dining, including the parking spaces, are full, that they do not have enough help to service their customers. They also admit that they do not expect the situation to improve, but to get worse with a great resignation. I'm appealing to this committee to make the right choice, to not rush into this decision, to perhaps even table this decision for a while, to not come to this chamber with preconceived notions of what you want,
30
but
seconds.
to earnestly and fairly listen to your community, the hardworking employees, the barbers, the lawyers, the bankers, the insurance agents, the jewelers, the printers, the craftsmen, the pharmacists, etc., and the customers who have to put up with these inconveniences. So thank you for your consideration. I represent Wingate's Pharmacy, which begins its 122nd year in business at the same location downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Call somebody else up to the mic. Please state your name and your address and 3 minutes.
Good evening, Don Whalen, 12 Lincoln Ave in Nashua. When it comes to the discussion of barriers, we need to do what is right for all downtown businesses. Main Street has grown as the city of Nashua has grown, and the traffic lights and traffic patterns have adjusted to the needs of the city and downtown traffic. The non-barrier version of Main Street is presumably designed to accept a certain amount of north and south traffic, as well as cross traffic and traffic lights. As terribly designed and timed as they are supposed to help manage the flow of downtown traffic. The barrier version of Main Street has a number of issues as I see it. The barriers cause an enormous amount of downtown congestion since the amount of traffic allowed to flow through downtown is throttled. This extra congestion causes many drivers to take shortcuts and side streets through adjoining neighborhoods. These neighborhoods are not designed to handle this extra amount of traffic, and many of these neighborhoods have children playing outside during the warmer months. It can and has taken up to 20 to 25 minutes to get down Main Street. And if you don't believe this, you clearly are taking the side streets like many other drivers. Additionally, the traffic lights don't appear to be adjusted at all to accommodate the restricted traffic flow of Main Street. I love downtown Nashua, and I have visited many of the establishments over the last 2 months, including Oddfellows, The Garden, O'Brien's, Peddler's Daughter, Surf, MT's Local Kitchen, Martha's, Fratello's, Tostao's, and Pinelli's, and the Flight Center. This belly doesn't happen on its own. If you'll notice, these are all restaurants, and I think most people are fine trying to find parking, maneuvering through the barriers when they're going for a meal that might take up to 1 or 2 hours. But this does impact other local businesses. Perhaps instead of barriers, the city could loosen the guidelines for sidewalk usage for restaurants and bars. I drive down Main Street between 2 to 10 times a day, so I understand the challenges. Let's do what's right and support all of our downtown businesses.
Thank you. Anybody else in the chamber that wishes to speak?
Kristen Wilson, 60 Indian Rock Road. I don't want to repeat what's already sufficiently been addressed by the other speakers tonight, but I do echo their statements, and I agree with their opinions regarding the unattractiveness of the barriers, the traffic and the parking nightmare that they present. It should not take someone an hour from the top of Main Street to get to the bottom of Main Street and make a bank deposit. And that's what's happening during the months where the barriers are out currently. The safety issues, the delivery and pickup issues, the lack of use of the designated spaces that actually we saw this past year. I share their concerns and I agree wholeheartedly with their opinions on that. But what I would like to address more is a few areas that I think are important that the committee take into consideration when you are reviewing the actual proposed legislation that's before you. In my review of the ordinance, just taking it paragraph by paragraph, the first paragraph specifically designates the legislation for use by restaurants for the purpose of outdoor dining. It is being proposed under the guise that it's necessary for COVID-19 restrictions. This is inaccurate, and it's a misrepresentation of our current status. There are no COVID restrictions on restaurants, and there haven't been for almost a year and a half. They've been open at full capacity since August of 2020. There is no need for an emergency order from the city to step in and address expanded dining space downtown. Paragraph 2, whereas the expanded outdoor dining has proven to be a successful economic stimulant for the city. While that may have been true in the summer of 2020, I would like to see those numbers for this past summer. We know that we have hundreds of thousands invested in these unattractive cement barriers and will continue to sink hundreds of thousands each year we continue to use them, between moving them, lost parking revenue, lost ticket revenue, in addition to the loss of revenue from all of the people who have found new locations to do their shopping and their business simply to avoid our now chaotic downtown. We also know that the street dining is really only utilized by some of the restaurants a few nights a week because most of the restaurants downtown are not open until 4 p.m. and the tables were often empty until weather-appropriate evenings on the weekends. How can this be characterized as a successful economic stimulant? Just stating it does not make it a fact, especially when there are actual numbers and corroborating evidence suggesting otherwise. Paragraph 3 again asserts a positive economic impact and maintains that barriers are necessary.
Ma'am, can you collect your thoughts, because you did hear we gave you the time.
I will, thank you. Because of COVID. This may have been the case back in May through August of 2020. It no longer exists. At the very least, this legislation should not be recommended because it's overzealous, overreaching, and essentially amounts to illegal taking for 3 more years based on bogus and unfactual information. Thank you.
Anybody else in the chamber wants to offer public comment? Seeing none, we will now go to friends online. I'll recognize Matthew Guthrow. Mr. Guthrow, could you please state your name, your address, and you do also have 3 minutes to speak.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Matthew Guthrow, 104 Fawn Lane here in Nashua. Dear Alderman and the Infrastructure Committee and city staff, thank you for allowing public comment on this item concerning the extension of the seasonal barriers on Main Street. I believe that this was once a good idea put in place to support our restaurant community back in 2020 during a time when there was limited capacity restrictions imposed by the state when it came to indoor dining operations. Unfortunately, this temporary measure has outlived its usefulness as the state of New Hampshire lifted those indoor dining restrictions in the summer of 2020. Now these unnecessary graffiti barriers seek to limit traffic flow and parking in our downtown area. These unnecessary graffiti barriers hamper our first responders' efforts in this corridor to make emergency calls and route patients to our downtown hospitals. This unnecessary graffiti barriers also take away from the charm of our historic downtown district. I ask you to reflect on what the cost of this is taking place. It's laughable to think that how this legislation is being presented, this isn't a COVID emergency measure. I'm sure we could opine for hours how this is an unnecessary burden to the taxpayers to continue with these immovable barriers. Maybe tonight we could take into consideration the businesses that are not in the food service industry that have been adversely affected by these unnecessary graffiti barriers. I'm talking about the banks, salons, pharmacies, dental and business offices, and boutiques that had to suffer because their customers couldn't either find parking or they just didn't want to deal with this unnecessary traffic nightmare. Clearly, this plan was not thought out well. And the mayor's campaign to make this permanent would be an outrage, because as the city continues to increase the amount of property taxes taken from its residents, you are missing out on what should be needed parking revenue. In conclusion, this is an unnecessary burden to the taxpayers, financially and physically, causing an unsafe traffic nightmare and limiting our residents' access to parking in our downtown. All of this done so that a small portion of our downtown businesses would benefit from. I agree with one of your previous speakers, Commissioner Mike Sousy, that if this were to be presented as a ballot question, this measure would fail by a significantly large margin. On behalf of your constituents, I humbly ask that you reject this proposal and move the city forward past the pandemic interventions that are no longer needed. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call on Alex Como. Mr. Como, could you please state your name, your address, and you also have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Alex Como, 4 Lewis Street. Main Street is home to numerous fine restaurants that have made good use of the additional seating space provided to them by the barriers. However, Main Street is also home to other businesses that do not benefit from these lane closures. Banks, jewelry stores, pharmacies, yoga studios, clothing boutiques, attorneys, barbershops, and other small businesses all feel the financial effects of the loss of frontage parking and the loss of downtown visitors steered to alternative retail locations such as Amherst Street and the Daniel Webster Highway, as well as other locations in other towns due to fears of traffic congestion and parking availability. While restaurants are understandably in support of these barriers, the majority of businesses located on Main Street are not restaurants. The seizure of 50% of Main Street's travel lanes for outdoor seating is unsustainable. While a vibrant Main Street commercial and retail district is an attractive prospect, we can't also forget that Main Street is one of only 3 roads that cross the Nashua River. The Broad Street Parkway is sparsely used, and Bridge Street, which turns into Canal Street, is a single lane in each direction that already suffers on its own to heavy congestion, especially at rush hour. Asking drivers who wish to avoid Main Street congestion to divert onto Bridge Street and increase their travel distance by over 260% is not a solution, especially when that route only leads right back to Main Street anyway at Railroad Square, one of the most heavily congested intersections in the downtown area, and would further overwhelm the already congested East Hollis Street. Congestion is bad enough when Main Street is fully open and downtown suffers from a lack of adequate accessible parking solutions. This plan would reduce the number of handicap accessible parking spaces along Main Street, making it more difficult for residents of different ability levels to take advantage of Main Street shopping and dining. The stop traffic also presents a less than ideal dining experience, with tables essentially adjacent to travel lanes. Diners have to endure vehicle exhaust and engine noise, loud music, drivers smoking, and more. These outdoor areas are also only available during good weather and only for a short period of time in the summer. More often than not, these outdoor tables have sat empty as diners have chosen to escape these negative experiences by either going elsewhere or sitting indoors now that they're allowed to without restriction. Lastly, due to the length and impact of this proposal, I would ask that no decision be made on this topic until after the next board begins their term. The people of Nashua recently voted to send 7 new voices to the Board of Aldermen. And as this proposal would last for the duration of the incoming board's term and beyond, and it will be the incoming
30
board
seconds.
that has to deal with its ramifications, it should be the incoming board that decides the best course forward. In closing, Main Street restaurants already have the ability to offer outdoor seating without expanding into the travel lanes, and many have been doing so before the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. This proposal is not to allow outdoor seating, as that is already allowed. This proposal is only about the unsightly concrete barriers and the closure of travel lanes along one of Nashua's most traveled roads. I do believe the outdoor seating was a saving grace for some restaurants at the beginning of the pandemic when they were forced to limit their capacity. But since those capacity limits are no longer in place, this is an obsolete solution to a problem that no longer exists. Thank you.
Also online, I do have a gentleman identified as Patrick. Patrick, I'll call you next. Can you please state your full name and address, and also you have 3 minutes to speak.
Hi, everybody. My name is Patrick Peraggio. I live at 17 Emerson Road here in Nashua. I am in support of the expansion of the outdoor seating. I understand that there are some legitimate concerns that folks have. I would like to point out that with regard to the question of available parking in the city, folks that I've spoken to directly, as well as numerous people that exchange information on this online, are really unaware of the available parking that we have within a half a block or 1 block off of Main Street. Even some of the larger lots, the Elm Street parking garage, the lot behind Crosby's Bakery, folks are just not aware of where parking is available. And I'd like to ask that if folks would consider perhaps we could solve that specific problem with some additional signage. Regarding the impact to traffic, it is true that we have traffic up on Main Street. But let's remember that Main Street USA was never intended to be a thoroughfare. It's not a highway. It's not a cut through. Main Street USA is supposed to be the place where the community congregates. It's where the traffic is supposed to build up. It's where the retail, non-big box stores and the non-chain restaurants are located. That's the whole point of Main Street USA. So I do understand that it can have some impact to folks that are trying to use it as a cut through the city, but that's really not the intention of Main Street. With regard to the barriers, I understand that some folks are not happy with the way the painting project turned out. This is something that I'm sure we would all agree that we can tweak over time. Folks will recall that by the time the barrier project was actually made and folks were selected to do that work, there was really not a lot of time for artists to get in there and actually turn them into something that they would like to have all up and down the road. So I would just like to say that Main Street is a place for the community. I understand everybody's of concerns, but I think that we can have targeted solutions to some of those specific problems rather than just a blanket shutdown of this project. So that's all I would like to add, and want to thank everybody for their civility and decorum throughout this dialogue.
Thank you. And also online, I'll recognize Paul Shea. Mr. Shea, can you please give your name, address, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, thank you. My name's Paul Shea, and I am the Executive Director of Great American Downtown. I live at 102 Toll Street here in French Hill in Nashua. Our organization is not taking a position on the issue. I'm here tonight to convey public feedback that we have gathered both from businesses and organizations in the downtown area, as well as public feedback from the broader community. There's just a couple of items, and I'll try and be quick so I don't overextend my time. Of the businesses surveyed, we had a total of 45 respondents, 2 of which were building owners, 14 were merchants and retail establishments, 4 were nonprofits, 11 were professional services, and 14 were restaurants and bars. Of the building owners, it was a small group there, but we had 50% for, 50% against. For merchants and retail, we had 57% against. For nonprofits, mine is not included in these results. 75% were in favor, Of professional services, 64% were against. Of restaurants and bars, 72% of that group were for it. Overall, with all respondents factored in, a total of 54% for, 46% against. So of those results, there was really not a strong inclination one way or the other. We'll continue to keep the survey open, especially so that we can collect comments. There was a lot of valuable commentary to insights on the experiences of the folks responding. We also asked folks about aesthetics, and we presented the options of the composite barriers, the stainless steel barriers, and the painted jersey barriers. 17% preferred the composite barriers, which were trialed and somewhere out in front of Surf, I believe, this year. 54% were in favor of a stainless steel barrier with the planters.
30 seconds.
31% were in favor of the painted jersey barriers. The public survey, we had 823 respondents. 40.4% said yes, absolutely. 37.1% said they'd like to see some hybrid model that would allow for increased flow of traffic. 16.5% said no, once the pandemic is over, it should be ended. And 5.8% indicated that it should be engineered into a complete street, a street designed for dining, pedestrians, bikers, and transit of all types.
Time.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else online on Zoom that wants to speak? And I don't see any more hands. I'll call again anybody in the chamber. Seeing none, I will close the public comment portion of the meeting. Communications.
There are none.
There is one.
Oh, sorry, communications from Philip Bouchard regarding petition of signatures, removal of barriers.
Okay, there being no objection, I'll accept the communication and place it on file. Also, as far as communications, I have a communication here that was submitted after the agenda was written. So without objection, I will accept the communication from Mary Lou Blaisdell of Design Wares at 206 Main Street. And also she's the chair of the Downtown Improvement Committee. And I'll place that without exception on file. Alderman Lopez.
Just a point of order, we have received an ongoing parade of emails that were addressed to the board, but is it more appropriate for those to go to the Board of Aldermen and be accepted in a meeting, since they were addressed usually to the Board of Aldermen? Or were those going to be accepted in a future meeting?
If you received it in a personal, I don't, know if it went to the full board. I, as you, and I'm sure, do our homework, and we do read them all. The reason I am accepting Ms. Blaisdell is because she does recognize is a legitimate chair of the downtown improvement.
Understood,
So as compared
understood, but
to,
I was referring to the ones that were used, that literally addressed the Board of Aldermen and used the Board of Aldermen general email address.
yeah, but as has been our tradition in general, because this occurs at every alderman's meeting, as you know, we do receive a plethora of emails that don't really per se get, put into the agenda, but we do read it and we do encourage them because it helps us as we vet the decision. So, thank you. Okay, petitions.
Petition for street acceptance, Minto Way and Shore Drive. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to make a motion to recommend final passage.
Okay, we have a motion of final passage. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All members of the committee are in chamber. I'll call it as a voice vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Unfinished business.
There's none.
New business resolutions.
There are none.
New business ordinances. And I'm going to ask the favor, because we do have people here that are probably very interested in what happens this evening, So without objection, I will take them out, one out of order, that is O-21-076, relative to the seasonal road closures and elimination of certain on-street parking for the use of restaurants and outdoor dining. And I wonder if the clerk could please give me a motion.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, for purposes of discussion tonight, I'll make a motion to recommend final passage of O-21-076.
Okay, we have on O-21-076, a motion of final passage. Any comment on the motion? Alderman Jettie.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that there are representatives, I may be wrong, but I think there are representatives from the fire department and the police department.
Yes,
here.
I will call them. Thank you, Mr. Jettie.
Okay.
You know, but as a matter of fact, I should probably do it now. The thing is, Chief Rhodes, do you want to come forward? Also, too, do we have Deputy Chief Rourke here? You might as well come up. Welcome to the hot seat. Thank you.
My CTAP seat.
I've always liked this when police and fire can sit together. Or you can move closer. Welcome, gentlemen. Chief Rhodes, and so members of the committee know, I did make phone communications with several people. We did hear testimony, which kind of I find concerning, and it has to do with public safety. I, not here this evening, I did speak to the head of the AMR ambulance, Chris Daywaz. He does have an opinion on the barriers, but I says, I want to have your answer as far as, is it affecting the quality or safety of the community? According to AMR, what he tells me, I know it's third-party testimony from me, but I'm sure if inquired, we could get that written from Mr. Daywaz. But he did state that he received no official complaint on the thing. And I'm sure if we had received official complaint, and I assure the citizens of this community that if we received an official complaint, I, as chairman of this board, would act accordingly. But we have never received from any of our authority, people that are in that capacity, never really complained to us on the effect of the traffic situation in the city. So therefore, on that segue, Chief Rhodes.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Brian Rhodes. I have the privilege of serving as the 14th Chief of the Fire Department of the City of Nashua. Nashua Fire Rescue has never and will never, I'm pretty confident to say, although we can always say always or never, like any type of reductions in traffic flow on Main Street. We were a big proponent of the stroll, when we had the stroll. For years, we did nothing to protect the 30,000+ people that came there. And we lobbied very hard to get hard barriers put up. In this case, I think if we're putting people in the streets, yes, we have to protect those people. Things happen. I've always said, yeah, this is Nashua, and knock on wood, we have a pretty safe city here. But I think that's for a reason, because I think we plan well. We have an extremely professional and competent police department. I couldn't be prouder of our fire department. And that's because the community supports us. To come out at this point is kind of tough for us. To speak against or speak for the businesses of Main Street, because that's, we technically work for you. We are public servants. So all we can really speak to is you pay me to be the head fire official, fire rescue in the city of Nashua, and you pay now Acting Chief Rourke to be the head police official. So we can give you our best advice. We can give you industry standards, best practice. I can give you data. Part of what I can give you is, and every member of the board was given a copy of the master plan that was just completed that the full board approved for National Fire Rescue. And if you, for those in the audience who don't have this, it speaks about population density. And all this information was taken from the city's GIS website. So this is all Nashua-specific information. Nashua is a densely populated city with 2,893 residents per square mile. For the sake of comparison, the population density of New Hampshire is 152 residents per square mile. And the population density nationally is 91 residents per square mile. The most densely populated areas of Nashua, with more than 10,000 residents per square mile, are in the eastern part of the city in the neighborhoods surrounding fire stations 1, 2, and 4. And also goes on to say there's a pocket in the south end of the city. So fire stations 1, 2, and 4 are the Amherst Street Station, the Lake Street Station, and the East Hollis Street Station. So if you triangulate that, that's kind of the area we're talking about. When this study was undertaken, and in full disclosure, the initial number here was for the entire city. The response time in the 90th percentile from 2017 to 2019 was 6 minutes and 47 seconds. I had our staff run the numbers for us from April 1st of this year, 2021, to October 31st of this year. For the stations 1, 2, and 4, which I just mentioned, are in the most densely populated portion of our city, we have increased our response time by 1 minute and 8 seconds. Now, that might not seem like a major number, but it is an increase. My concern as the head of the fire department is we are undertaking some pretty significant growth in this densely populated area. Moynihan Manor, School Street Flats, Performing Arts Center. One incident on Main Street where I have to take one fire hose off a fire engine, or we need to set up an aerial truck, we are shutting down Main Street completely. There's nothing I can do about that. That is going to create a mess. Anytime we go down there, we create a problem. The trucks are big. What are we going to do? As far as the traffic goes, we have traffic preemption. And for those who don't understand or know what that is if you see a fire truck on the roads, lights and sirens on, but if you noticed on the mast arms, on the signal, where the signal lights are, if the red strobe is flashing, and the light is green, that means there's a fire vehicle coming up behind you. This system is extremely old. But it only works in the direction of which the vehicle is traveling. Anecdotally, I can say I've traveled Main Street quite a bit. Every day I travel multiple times just to see what's going on. And I think I can say, and I think honestly, anyone in this room or anyone in this city who travels on Main Street multiple times a day will understand that there are times when the traffic is backed up. And I think the problem we have is not when we're going north or south. Our problem is when we're going north or south and we have to go east or west. Because people get aggravated when they're queued up and they sit through a couple sets of lights, and then they decide they're gonna pull out into the intersection and block it. And unfortunately, when we change the lights, it does nothing for the side streets. At the end of the day, I don't know how else to say this, but we are good and everything is good until something happens. And when something happens, people are going to look at Chief Rourke and say, what happened? So this is our opportunity to come here and just speak the truth to you and tell you how it is. But ultimately, this is a decision that the board has to make. We were never in favor of the islands that were put into Main Street. We weren't really in favor of the barriers going up, but we lived with them and we make do. So I'll answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chief Rhodes. I do have one, well, I do have actually a couple. It seems in the public comment, and this is really concerning to me, can you state for the record, as what was alleged, has any elected official ever coerced anybody on the fire department to provide false information on this particularly? I find surprised that I even have to mention this, but it is said that it seems that some people in power are affecting your influence on this. I would imagine if there was a severe safety issue, you would have brought it to this board and to the city's attention a long time ago.
To the best of my knowledge, there is no one that has coerced or threatened anyone in my organization. And again, at the end of the day, it's my job just to give you the facts and give you the data, and to give you what I believe, as the head of your fire department, is the best industry standard, best practice advice that I can give for you to make the best decisions for the citizens and the business owners alike.
And Chief Rock, you're not off the hook. I'm going to ask you the same question too. But any other questions from anybody on the board to the fire chief? Seeing none. Chief Rourke, congratulations.
Thank you.
Looking forward to your new appointment and working with you. I'll just give you the floor if you would like to speak on this.
Sure. Kevin Rourke, Deputy Chief of Uniform Operations at the PD. Again, I know it's a hot topic, so I was just prepared tonight to give some feedback. And so what I did is I went out and spoke to the officers who drive the road every day and all day long. So I have some feedback from what they've seen over the last year and a half or so. Some of their major issues that they've had with the barriers. They've created significant traffic issues on Main Street, especially during traffic, rush hour traffic, the afternoons, second shift when most people are out there. They also advised that this was not taking place at the beginning of the pandemic when the barriers were put out. but it has tremendously increased when people started going back out and back to work. It has delayed responses when responding to emergency calls. The officers have pointed out a certain area of Canal Street, between Canal Street and Pearl Street, as the most congested area. And northbound traffic seems to be more congested than southbound traffic. Sometimes officers have sat at the lights for multiple cycles without moving, and most of this is the congestion going northbound. As you know, every spring and summer, we receive a lot of complaints of traffic and noise complaints on the vehicles and the motorcycles. So what we try to do every spring is try to get out there and deter this behavior. We receive many calls from the restaurants downtown. I mean, nobody wants to go out and sit at these outdoor dining facilities at these restaurants and hear a motorcycle or a vehicle revving their engine or playing the music loud. So we try to deter that right away for the season. So when we go out there with the barriers, we've had numerous occasions where it can be an officer safety issue, where you're pulling vehicles on Main Street because there's not a lot of room for traffic to pass by and the officer to get out of his vehicle. So that is definitely one thing that I received in the feedback that was important to them, the officer safety issue. What they started doing is trying to pull these vehicles over on the side streets, but sometimes that doesn't happen. It's out of their control. They did note, since the removal of the barriers, officers have noticed that traffic flow, although busy at peak times, has significantly lessened on Main Street. They've also noticed that their ability to navigate Main Street during emergency calls has improved. And that is feedback I've received from the officers, again, that travel that road every day and you know, we're a 24/7 entity.
Thank you, Chief Rourke. Alderman Tenzer.
So, if I may, I just wanted to follow up on something that the chief said before, Chief Rhodes. Chief, you said that, you know, if there's one call on Main Street, you know, you would tie up the whole street. But that's gonna be the same whether the barriers are in place or not, right? I mean, if there was a fire on one of the Main Street buildings between East and West Hollis Street and Water Street, I mean, those, you know, you're gonna reroute traffic out of that area around, correct?
I guess potentially, depending on the severity of the incident, but when you limit the roadway for me, our aerial trucks take a minimum of 16 feet to set up. That's a lot of room. So I can't have cars coming by our firefighters while they're operating out there, so we would have to shut the whole thing down. If we're back at the, you know, 4 or 5 lanes of Main Street, the potential exists that maybe 2 of those lanes are open on the other side, and our friends in the police department would help, you know, facilitate the traffic movement over there. It would still mess things up, but it's just a possibility. I mean, there's a lot of what ifs, but that's the world I live in. There are no certainties in the fire department or police department. If you would have told me last Saturday we would have had a fire at 7 in the morning and my assistant chief almost would have gotten hit by a vehicle driving around him at an accident he came upon, I'd say no way. So we just, you know, we plan for the worst and hope for the best. And that's all I try to give you, is the best information and the possible scenarios that are out there.
All right. I do have one. Chief Rourke, did you or members of the previous administration were ever influenced by any political official on this particular thing? In other words, did anybody ever contaminate you?
No.
Okay. And if there was severe safety or life-threatening type of situation, you would make it known to city officials?
Absolutely.
To remedy this? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Enough said. Any other further questions from any members of the board? Gentlemen, I thank you for coming before this committee. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
At this time, I would like to bring up Director Cummings.
Thank you.
Yes.
And as I'm getting situated, I believe Julie Chismus is on the line, and I think she has a couple slides that she wants to present to you this evening. So you may want to have her go first, and I'll follow on after.
That sounds good. Julie, are you all queued up and ready to go?
I am.
I'll recognize Ms. Chismus. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I am going to share my slide. All right, are we good?
We're
Yep.
good.
All right, thank you. For the record, my name is Julie Chismus, and I am a transportation analyst and long-range planner in the Community Development Division. I worked very closely with Sarah Marchant, former Community Development Division Director, and Matt Sullivan, Planning Director, on Imagine Nashua, along with our consultants. And Imagine Nashua is an update to the city's master plan, which has been mentioned earlier. Imagine Nashua was a 9-month-long effort resulting in a framework for the future of the city that was approved by the Board of Aldermen on October 12th, 2021. The top land use and development goal in Imagine Nashua is to promote redevelopment that is mixed use, multimodal, and sustainable in targeted areas with access to transit, infrastructure, and amenities. As mentioned previously, Main Street is an area highlighted as a key area for targeted redevelopment. The goal for Main Street is to facilitate public realm expansion and improvement on Main Street to maintain downtown's commercial activity. Recommendations to achieve this goal include expanding sidewalks and reducing the number of lanes on Main Street to make the corridor more people-centric and less car-centric. Additional recommendations include protected bike lanes and more street trees. These improvements will help make Main Street a destination rather than a cut-through. Parking alternatives are also recommended, including limiting Main Street parking to locations where there are quick pickups and no need for sidewalk expansion, and also directing the public to parking on side streets or in parking lots and garages. The vision is to have a vibrant, active, multimodal Main Street with an appropriate amount of parking along the main corridor, including handicap parking, and in parking garages or lots within an appropriate walking distance of the downtown core. And in general, a quarter mile is what's considered an appropriate walking distance. Imagine Nashua acknowledges that changes to the pedestrian realm will affect available parking, and that changes to parking capacity must be considered. The changes all need to be balanced, as does planning for how these changes adapt to the colder winter months. None of the considerations include the changes the plan envisions, and we believe that they can be addressed as the details of these improvements and compromises are worked out. This plan was not developed in a vacuum. It was well informed by a 23-member steering committee, and a variety of activities and outreach methods were used to ensure that the plan approach, vision, and goals were representative of the diverse Nashua community. To achieve this collective outcome, the planning team conducted a wide variety of digital and non-digital engagement activities throughout the planning process, including surveys, webinars, well-attended public workshops, focus group meetings, comment forums, in-person events, and social media. Information about Imagine Nashua and related meetings was distributed through various channels, including the imagine.nashuanh.gov website, multiple social media sites, flyers and newsletters, Nashua's community television, ward meetings, and small group meetings. Public meeting invites and plan updates were regularly shared via an email distribution list with over 950 addresses. This plan, including the Main Street scenario, was shaped by those who live, work, play, and care about Nashua. The public meetings we held over the course of 7 months were well attended, and many comments were received through the digital platforms. At our initial public meeting, we had over 100 people attend our kickoff meeting. And then, anywhere from 90 to over 100 at the follow-up meetings. About 25% of the comments on the digital map were pinned to the downtown Main Street area. Comments related to Main Street that received the most upvotes or downvotes, meaning people liked them or didn't like them, include a comment that stated, consider closing 2 or 3 blocks of Main Street off completely and routing the traffic around the center of town. This would create a pedestrian walking mall where there could be vendor carts and would certainly improve the outdoor dining experience. That comment received 38 upvotes and 6 downvotes. Another comment was this whole block needs a major reinvestment, sidewalk and green space improvements, public art, better seating and capacity for outdoor theater and musical performances. 29 upvotes, 1 downvote. And then another one, not necessarily Main Street, but related, is how about continuing and finishing the Riverfront Boardwalk project? 38 upvotes, no downvotes. As you can see on the slide, we attended 35 to 40 focus group meetings with small groups, anywhere from 4 to 24 people. And between all those, we had 560 different participants hearing what we had to say about Imagine Nashua and sharing their input and sharing their vision and letting us know what they wanted to see in the plan. We went to, once the weather got warmer and we were able to meet with people outside, we spoke with people at the library, we went to the Tree Streets block party. We had a Polis survey with over 500 participants and almost 30,000 votes cast. This plan was well vetted, and a lot of the input that we heard is included in it. This plan reflects what we heard. The vision to have a vibrant, active, multimodal Main Street is not a new concept. The 2000 master plan called for improvements to Main Street to better accommodate bicycle travel, and Main Street was a #1 priority when it came to improving pedestrian facilities. The 2003 Downtown Master Plan envisioned opportunities for redevelopment, including Main Street North, with recommendations for enhancing the pedestrian experience and supporting bikeways and trails. And so the city invested heavily in its downtown through the 2012 Main Street Sidewalk Project, which included benches, bike racks, safer pedestrian crossings, street trees, dart installations, improved lighting, and expanded sidewalks. And then in 2017, public input again strongly supported the recommendations included in the Downtown Riverfront Master Plan for improved access to the river and green spaces through connected walkways and street redesigns to enhance the pedestrian experience. And again, public input gathered for the 2020 Bike Ped Plan identified Main Street and downtown as a specific area of concern for those who are either walking or biking and worthy of improvement. And the input we heard during Imagine Nashua continues to support an enhanced and expanded public realm in the downtown area. And that's really all I want to say about Imagine Nashua. I know we heard earlier from Mr. Susi that he read a section of that, and I don't want to repeat what he said, but again, I just want to reiterate that this plan was well vetted. We went out, we talked to a lot of people. I'm still talking to a lot of people. And we are continuing to get positive feedback and including, the scenario for a Main Street that is more focused on people. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, as a county commissioner representing this district, my name came out, can I just respond for 20 seconds?
At this particular time, we're past public comment. I do recognize your position, but it is part of our
Well, I'm asking
tradition.
not to respond as a public, I'm asking to respond in my official position as a county commissioner representing the Nashua.
You're not on the agenda. I'll have to,
Okay, thank you.
regretfully, I'll have to deny you that request. Thank you, sir. Director Cummings.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Tim Cummings, Director of Economic Development. And I appreciate being here this evening because I look at it as the start of a conversation. I think a lot of the points made here this evening, both people who are for and against the legislation are good and valid points that I think we can work towards a piece of legislation that everyone can be proud of. With that being said, Mr. Chairman, the point about the COVID, I just want to be clear that language that's in the document before you, that was provided by our legal department. I defer to them as to whether that's necessary or not. If it's within the wishes of the legal department and this board to remove that language, I think so be it. But nonetheless, that was the language that was produced by our legal department on the legislation before you. But putting that issue aside, because I think the real meat of the matter is talking about whether we want to pursue having the barriers for the next 3 years. So just very quickly, O2176 is essentially the current program and plan that we ran this summer. The only caveat or change is that we would be looking for the ability to have the authority to, if we so endeavored to, continue on for three additional years. So I would recommend continuing with the program under the following, with the following rationale and conditions. So first and foremost, we want to have a healthy downtown. We heard some of those comments earlier today. A healthy downtown prioritizes people. It creates a pedestrian environment that people can enjoy. And I have an article that I'll share in a second that kind of shows what I'm talking about with that. Second, whether we like it or not, and I understand we can call it different things, the reality is COVID-19 isn't going away. The fact is you know, Hampshire as of right now is the worst state in the country for cases. So I think we just, you know, need to be cognizant of that and recognize the situation that we're in right now. As Julie Chismis alluded to, this is following the direction of our master plan. This master plan was publicly vetted, and it was a lot of public input was taken into this document, which, you know, outlines the desires of the community. Market research and market data. So a lot of, you know, decisions that, you know, come out of my office and a lot of policy recommendations that I make are based on data and facts. And the facts demonstrate that the market is responding well and is thriving. We don't have any boarded up buildings. No, there's no plywood in windows. And in fact, the evidence shows that Main Street has its highest occupancy, and we have businesses moving into Main Street. For example, just over the last year or so, we've had a male clothing boutique move in, we've had a candle shop move in, a frozen yogurt shop, a decor store, a yoga studio, and for the first time ever, new construction of 150 new apartment are being developed and constructed. That leads me to the conclusion of that Main Street's on solid footing. And I think that you should just be aware of that because that is the market reality that we're living with. Additionally, parking data. The preliminary data that's come in shows that we have ample parking. There's a utilization rate of about 33%, which falls well under than what is recommended for a community, which, you know, you should shoot for an 80 to 85% utilization rate, which tells me that we have ample supply. General feedback, you know, the general feedback we've gotten has been positive. The Downtown Improvement Committee this summer hired an intern to walk Main Street, observe, collect data, and the feedback has been very supportive of the program. And this aligns with the national trends that I've read about, where more and more communities are moving in the direction of trying to activate their roadways in a different way and trying to enhance the public realm to make it more pedestrian friendly and not automotive centric. So I would recommend you continue with this program. I would caution you that I think the deployment of the barriers should only be done if there's a willingness and an appetite to undertake a larger infrastructure project, where a long-term plan would be to change Main Street permanently by creating and allowing for a multimodal transportation type of system and adopting traffic calming measures. The continuation of the barriers is a good short-term, or what I would refer to as a semi-permanent strategy or solution, but it's not a long-term strategy, a solution. And so I would, if you want to continue with the program, I think it's a good thing to do to have a well and thriving downtown, but only if you have a long-term plan and you're willing to make that long-term investment in the infrastructure upgrades that would be necessary to make it permanent. You know, I'll close my comments by just saying I note that there's the opposition to the legislation. The opponents, I think, are a well-organized group. I hear what they have to say, but I don't think that they represent the majority. It appears that there's concerns and more driving this conversation about quote-unquote defeating a daunting initiative than doing what I would recommend is in the best interest of the downtown. To that end, I'd ask that you turn your attention to the Cultivating Vitality report that was done back in 2010, where it outlines a strategy to create a thriving downtown in Nashua by, among other things, making the downtown more bike-friendly. The document calls for a calmer Main Street, which leads to a more pedestrian-friendly environment. And if you don't want to look at that plan, I suggest you look at the Downtown Master Plan done in 2003. That outlines a vision for Main Street to be more pedestrian-friendly by creating connectivity, and it states there is over 4 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet of development. That's more than adequate supply for a downtown that aspires to be pedestrian-friendly, mixed-use, dense, and urban. So supply is not a problem. Therefore, I would suggest that narrowing Main Street is not a divisive issue. And the fact remains that if you want a healthy and vibrant downtown, you really should reduce your widths. So more of the public realm can be used for non-automotive traffic. So those are the comments that I had to give you this evening. And I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cummings. Any members of the board have a question, Director Cummings? Alderman Lopez.
So it was mentioned several times that there are issues with handicap accessibility and potentially with cars needing to pick up goods and leave rapidly to deliver them. Does your new plan allow, or I mean, is your new plan new? And does it update or improve based on what we've learned over the summer about where handicap parking accessibility needs to be located, whether there are places for specifically picking up and dropping off drivers so that it's not all the 3 spaces that are available to a business that might need them are all occupied by people who are there for an hour or more?
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes, you may.
So we constantly are evaluating how the barriers were deployed this summer, and we would be looking to make tweaks to improve upon it. Yes, we heard about the handicap issue and relative to access to handicap spaces. We would look to make those changes. We would just try to be as accommodating as we can. We're not going to be able to do everything for everyone, but we did study this issue all summer long, so we can improve upon it. And in fact, the first year we did it, we noted some tweaks that needed to be made. We made those tweaks. We did that again this summer as well, and I would only venture to guess we would look to do a similar thing.
If I may too, Alderman Lopez, I'll recognize you in a second, but this seems like a wonderful time for me to get a public service announcement out there, just so that everybody knows. Every parking space is handicapped parking space. According to the state of New Hampshire RSA, if you are properly placarded, you can park, and in the city of Nashua, you will not receive a ticket. Now, there is a difference between ADA compliancy for that parking space. That can be discussed, but every parking space is a handicapped parking space. Okay, Alderman Lopez.
I was just gonna say, or ask Director Cummings, the plan that was presented in accompaniment with the ordinance, or at least the minutes of today's agenda, is that exactly what you're planning, or are you still revising a plan?
The plan that was submitted was exactly what we did last summer.
So it's not what you necessarily intend to be the case moving forward for 3 years?
No. Well, last summer, we were given the ability to make changes, and so we made those changes. We would be looking to do the same thing again. For instance, we know that handicap parking may be more desirable in certain areas of the downtown. We would look to shift that parking to be, so the handicap parking could be more accommodating to that area of the city.
So just to clarify, I believe...
Follow up, go ahead, Alderman Lopez.
Thanks. I believe that this committee did endorse the flexibility to move and change the parking spaces, but specifically the barrier placement. Is the barrier placement what you're intending for the next 3 years?
Yes, I'm not sure I'm understanding the question, but yes, the barriers as outlined in the plan is what we would be intending to do.
Okay.
Can I,
Yes,
Mr.
you
Chair. I wanted to just quickly share my screen if I could and just quickly show everyone some examples.
And while you're doing it, before you get into it, Director Cummings, I very much thank you for requesting to speak on the chair, but to facilitate, we need an open discussion on this. So I think I'll relax the formalities and let's have the discussion.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just put up an article that was put out by Business Insider that I thought was pretty interesting, and it says 50 amazing new public spaces transformations that were captured by Google Street View. And I'll submit this so you can look at it, but I just wanted to call out, so in 2008, you know, this city, which happens to be in the Netherlands, chose to, you know, increase their island right here and narrow their street, which, you know, made it just more accommodating for bicycles. I thought this was a pretty cool one where this is not a very appetizing type of streetscape. They clearly learned from their mistakes. They were able to introduce outdoor dining, some parking. It made it, you know, quite a dramatic difference. They did that from 2011 through 2014. Again, one from 2008, which just shows how they made it more pedestrian friendly. Times Square. So Times Square in 2009, Times Square 2011, and then Times Square in 2014. And if you can just note the amount of changes that occurred from 2009 to 2014, where there was such a reduction in auto traffic and how it enhanced the public realm for the people. I think most people would agree that the Times Square of today is much better than the Times Square that was back a few decades ago. And it was, again, just all proactive type of planning initiatives that really changed how people thought of their built environment, that made it more appetizing for them to use, not just for their automobile, but for their walking and biking and transportation needs. So I'll stop right now showing you these. I'll submit these to you. You can look at them at your leisure, but it gets to the genesis or the point of what we've been trying to talk about, which is, you know, you want to design your downtown for not what Christmas Day is, but what it is overall, you know, on average. You know, you want to do a design that accommodates as much as you can, but you don't want to design for the worst case scenario. You know, that's, you don't, so again, oftentimes, you know, folks will make the analogy, we're not going to design a parking lot to accommodate parking for Christmas shopping. We'll design a parking lot for what makes sense for us as a business overall for the entire year. Same type of strategy needs to be implemented for a main street. You need to design your main street for not just your cars, but for your bicycles, for walking, and for people to enjoy the use of the public realm.
Okay, we do have some, would like to speak? Okay, I'm going to have in the chamber Alderman Tenza speak, but in the queue, I will recognize we do have 3 aldermen that want to speak. So in the queue will be Alderman Dowd, Alderman Clay, and Alderman Clemens. Chair recognizes Alderman Tenza.
Thank you. So a couple of earlier speakers tonight who are in favor, I think, of maintaining some type of outdoor dining, some type of barriers, you know, said that there's room for compromise here on this. I know that in our prior discussions on the barriers, you had educated us that, you know, part of the reason for some of the barriers is just to cut down and reduce the flow of traffic, or not, I shouldn't say cut down, but to influence the traffic at certain areas so that it's, you know, it's not worse than it is. But is there a way that, you know, that there could be a compromise where some blocks don't have barriers and others do? Or would that just not work logistically as a traffic, you know, would a traffic engineer never approve something like that?
Well, that's the latter part of what you brought up is what I would really want to talk through with Dan Hudson, because I don't have an answer for you right now. But I heard the comments earlier this evening, and I said to myself, you know, is there a way maybe where we could add in parallel parking and then have the outdoor dining behind the parallel parking? You know, and basically use the cars, if you will, as a barrier of sorts. There may be some streets where we could do that. I don't know if we could necessarily do it on Main Street because, as you pointed out, the traffic volume, the traffic speeds, it's really gonna be a public safety issue. So it's gonna be on a case-by-case basis that we could do that. And I also heard the points about, you know, we should just allow the expansion of just on-street sidewalk dining and let it go, spill over to other storefronts. And I think that that's a great idea as well. The issue there, though, is you're gonna need to maintain ADA compliance. And so some of the sidewalks in our downtown just don't allow for us to have the outdoor dining on the sidewalk and also maintain ADA compliance. And it's a give and take. And we have to make sure we're doing the best we can with what we have.
Thank you, Director Cummings. All set, Alderman Tenza? All right, I'll recognize Alderman Dowd.
Okay, I'm not a member of this committee, so I just want to make a couple points. First thing I want to do is thank everyone that came out and online with comments. I've read all of the emails that we've received, pro and con for the expansion. And in no order of comments. What Julie was speaking about on the design of downtown, we're nowhere near doing that. Yes, that's a nice goal, and any reduction in lanes on Main Street, we'd have to take care of the off-street streets as far as direction and traffic flow, which we have not done because that's an expensive project. I appreciate, especially those slides you were showing from Europe. They're way ahead of us on this type of thing. And also in Europe, there's a lot more bike traffic than here. I've traveled extensively in Europe, and a huge number of people travel by bicycle in Europe. But given that, the other thing is, and again, I'm not part of this committee, and you can do whatever you want with the action this evening, but as the legislation is written right now, I don't think it's ready for passage. The one thing that I think we have to do, and which is not done in a lot of political circles these days, is we have to look at compromise. The one thing I'm concerned about is all of the small businesses that are being impacted. We have to do what we can do to not have them as impacted or impacted at all in any plan that we do for the downtown. I think there are some compromise things that we can do. And that ranges everywhere from the expanded use of the sidewalks for outdoor dining to actually just doing away with this ordinance altogether. But that will be a decision of the Infrastructure Committee and the full Board of Aldermen. I think at the current time, I don't think approval of the current ordinance for another 3 years is ready for action. I do think that there's a lot of changes that need to be addressed, and I don't know how you can do that in a short period of time. So just my 2 cents. Again, I'm not part of your committee.
Thank you, Alderman Dowd. Alderman Clay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate being allowed to speak at this time. And like Alderman Dowd, I am not a member of this committee either. But I am never short of an opinion. So some of the comments that I want to make, first I want to kind of address something that Alderman Dowd brought up, that we don't have as many bikes as they do in Europe. And part of that is, especially in New England, we have such narrow streets and so much traffic, et cetera, that it's not conducive to biking. But if we made it friendlier, I think we would have more biking. I have a number of constituents who bike constantly. I have one that he bikes all the way to Merrimack back and forth every day. 12 months out of the year, unless it's really snowing or truly inclement weather, he has an electric bike that he uses, and he does a lot of pedal power too. I have another constituent, as Alderman Dowd knows, is 101A, that she goes back and forth on 101A, as well as a few others. So I think it's one of these things, build it and they will come. Now, having said that, I think that one of the other things that many people brought up from the audience as well as here is compromise. And I would like to see some, not to completely get rid of the barriers, but I'd like to see a little bit of compromise. I've talked to Director Cummings enough to know that we can't just stop the barriers for this one particular block because we continue to create bottlenecking. So we'd end up with wide roads and they'd have to go to narrow roads. But I do often wonder, as we drove by in the past year, some of those little cutouts. And I think he kind of already addressed this. You know, maybe there's some areas that we could do cutouts. They might not be handicap accessible cutouts because of the way the sidewalks are and so on. But I have good faith in him as well as Mr. Hudson and so on to come up with something that would work. One of the only issues that I really have about our barriers is that I think that we need to look at a lot of other things. And again, I think Director Cummings kind of alluded to this. We can't just put the barriers up, say, okay, that's the fix. We need to look at the whole plan. I'm not an engineer and I know that there would be a lot of expense to it, but one of the things that I did quite often because of the barriers was I took Factory Street, went all the way around, went to Walnut Street, and I would come back onto Main Street through High Street. Or I would go all the way around and come back down on Elm Street to get to City Hall. You know, my question was, why don't we turn, and I know it's been a conversation and people are gonna be cringing as I say this, turn West Pearl around. Make the one-way the opposite direction. People will come off of the Broad Street Parkway. People will come up the way that I did. And this would direct them to the Elm Street parking garage. We already have direction to the High Street parking garage. Director Cummings mentioned that we do have plenty of parking. I agree with him. I found lots of parking. I even parked in a lot that people don't even realize that we have that's behind the taxi area. I use that all the time when I have to go to downtown. Gentle Dental is my dentist. That's exactly where I park all the time. So I think we need to think out this plan a little bit more. I think that there are some kind of changes that we could make. Again, like I said, flipping West Pearl around. And I know it's not as easy as I just said it because there's a lot of engineering nightmares that go along with it. But I think it's a conversation worth having. And while I know that this needs to get done, I also would like to consider not having it quite as long. Maybe the April to October or May to October, when the weather really is conducive to being outside more often. I know in the past we wanted to kind of help with St. Patrick's Day and so on, but maybe that can't be the holiday we shoot for. You know, maybe we need to shoot for the beginning of spring. I'm sorry, the beginning of spring. A little bit further towards April as more of a goal and so on. But those are just my food for thought. And like I said, like Alderman Dowd said, I'm not a member of the committee, but I like us to really think about this before we push it too much further. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Clee. Alderman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Trying to get my camera on here. Thank you. So I just want to say that I appreciate everybody that came out tonight to speak on both sides of the issue. You know, it's always good to hear from constituents and particularly about our downtown because it's a community gathering place and it should be a place that we are, you know, that everybody wants to go to and doesn't think of as a kind of a pain to get to, you know, or be in. So with that said, you know, I had come up with a couple of amendments that I thought might be helpful for this legislation. And just without reading them, but to kind of go into the gist of them, you know, were basically to make it so that changes could be done to this plan as business needs, parking needs, traffic needs came up. Having listened to the police and the fire department, that is concerning to me, though, about the increase in time on the fire department going to responses. Increasing by a minute is quite a significant amount of time. That's the difference between life and death in some cases, whereas we're already out there, almost 7 minutes. So I don't think, however, that is a solution, that's a, I think we can look at that and we can say, well, that's directly because of the barriers. Well, that's true. That yes, maybe that is true, but I think we have to look at the fact that maybe, it's time for a new fire station, or maybe it's time for, to expand one or something along those lines. So there's it's more than, you can't just say, oh, it's because of the barriers, or, oh, we can't narrow Main Street because, then response times are going to go up and things like that. We have to look at these things as a whole. So, what I want to see, I do not think that getting rid of the barriers in whole is a good idea. I think most people in this city like what we did with the barriers, in that they helped a segment of the businesses downtown survive, and that in turn brought more people downtown in 2020, which helped create an atmosphere for growth in downtown. And I think that in some cases, in some places, even through 2021, the expanded dining was utilized very well by some particular businesses, better than others. And I think that for those particular businesses, I think that it was a success, and I think that they should be afforded the opportunity to go forward if they want with something. And so, and that's where I think that, what Alderman Dowd said, where compromise needs to come in. I think that a more pointed discussion needs to happen with the traffic department and with some of the stakeholders, because I think that some of the ideas that were raised have merit by some of the restaurateurs, and that is that if a restaurateur wants to have take advantage of this, maybe they should have to pay into it in order to take advantage of it. And if you don't pay into it, then we can free up the parking spaces in those areas, and maybe we wouldn't have as many. Now, again, that would have to go back to traffic, and we'd have to see if that'd be possible to even do that. But I think the bottom line here is that Main Street is going to be either 2 lanes one in each direction, or we can do 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction, and eliminate some of the parking in front of some of the restaurants, and then give those restaurants that want to pay to take those spaces, so that the city can recoup some of the lost revenue from those spaces not being there. They can have some of those spaces in front. The city can recoup some of the money And that, you know, of course, will go back into the Downtown Improvement Committee, which of course helps to vitalize all of downtown. And I think that somewhere in there is a compromise to be had. And I think what I would like to see is more discussion happen along those lines with some of the businesses, some of the stakeholders, with the understanding too, on both sides of this, with the understanding that no one is going to come out of this 100% happy. There are going to be some people that, no matter what we do, are not going to like the barriers downtown. There are going to be some people who do not like the fact that we didn't do the full Monty, and you know, why do we have to compromise? But compromise is the fundamental reason why we have a successful government here in Nashua, and one of the reasons why we're such a fantastic city, because we listen to everybody who comes to the table and presents ideas. And that's how the Downtown Improvement Committee came about to begin with. And that's one of the reasons why we have a successful downtown, is because we listen to what is being said. And so as much as I wanted to at the beginning of this meeting to come in and, you know, push to have this legislation go through with a couple amendments saying that, you know, it could be tweaked and redone, I hesitate only because there is a lot of discussion, I think, that still needs to be had. And what I would like to see is a map that is updated with a new proposal for 2022 that takes into account a lot of the things that were discussed here, some of the things that I've said, some of the things the public has said, other aldermen, the fire chief, the police chief, and let's figure something out that helps everyone and moves downtown in a better direction. So, you know, I came into the meeting with wanting to move this legislation forward, but I honestly, after hearing everybody tonight, I think the better idea is to come up with a compromise. Compromise is not a dirty word. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing, and I think that we can get some good out of it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to express my thoughts this evening.
Thank you, Alderman Clemmons. Alderman Jettie, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I know that I know that Director Cummings has the best of intentions. You know, he really wants downtown Nashua to succeed, and he's trying to do, you know, what he thinks is the best for the city. But you know, I have to say that this legislation that is before us, it talks about you know, it refers to a map. You know, it's a photo aerial view of the city with the barriers in various locations. The date on that map is February 3rd, 2021. And I noticed on the map it doesn't reflect a lot of the changes that we made last year. Where we relocated some barrels and some of the barriers. So you know, it concerned me that, you know, what this legislation is doing is asking us to approve, you know, the barriers as shown on that map for the next 3 years. And you know, And in spite of what the mayor said in his email soliciting support, he said that it would, allow us to make changes as we go along. This legislation does not have that language. This legislation does allow for additional barriers, additional closures, additional changes to, additional parking restrictions, but it pretty much incorporates things, not as they were this summer, but as they were the previous summer. Now, what I've heard here tonight, I've heard, some of the, I really don't know, but I think some of the biggest beneficiaries of this, outdoor dining program. Let me back up. When we did this, and it was largely your doing, with the cooperation of the Board of Public Works and other people, you came up with, with a plan that has been acknowledged as brilliant to rescue the restaurant businesses downtown because of the fact that in 2020 they could not have indoor dining, and this expanded their capacity to have outdoor dining, and everybody acknowledges it. It saved a lot of restaurants, and it certainly benefited them. And some of the biggest beneficiaries of that program, I think, were Michael Buckley and his 2 restaurants, and Martha's. I see they've been doing a great business, and they've come here tonight and said that they favor some looking at compromising, giving up some of their restaurant seating, and in order to allow more parking for the retail establishments. They even, they and those 2 and Rich Lannon even talked about being willing to pay a fee in order to have sidewalk dining. That says a lot. That tells me that they are really interested in trying to make a success of this program, not only for themselves, but for all of the downtown businesses. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to benefit the downtown businesses primarily, also to make downtown Main Street, Nashua, a place that will attract more people. And why do we want to attract those people? We want, so that they come downtown and frequent our businesses. Now, we've heard, those businesses come to us and say that, that they would like to work on a plan, that would make some compromises, that would make some tweaks. We've heard, the letter we got from Mary Lou Blaisdell, the chairman of the Downtown Improvement Committee. She said that she largely favors the barriers, but she's in favor of looking at changes to benefit more of the businesses, not just the restaurants, but all the businesses. And I've heard you tonight say that that you're open to making changes that would benefit, looking at different ways of approaching this situation. And when I was listening to Julie Chismus talk about the long-range master plan and the vision for downtown Nashua, yes, I think that it's acknowledged that people want a vibrant downtown. They want, when you talk about it being more pedestrian friendly, yes, people like that. I couldn't help but notice when I looked at the master plan and when she showed it tonight, I noticed when we talk about a friendlier downtown, I can't remember all of the words, but intermodal transportation, bike friendly, pedestrian friendly. In all of those photos, I didn't see one barrier. Yeah. So, the barriers were a brilliant idea. They were put in place to help our restaurants. I don't think even, I know I've talked to you, I don't think you see these concrete barriers as a permanent solution. But what we're talking about tonight is whether or not we would recommend final passage of this ordinance as it is before us. And I agree with, with other people who have said that I don't think it's ready for final passage. I would like you to take advantage of the offer by, Mr. Buckley to serve on a committee, maybe, some of the other people, that have spoken, Gary Wingate and Kathy Carden talked about, a compromise where they would, allow restaurant seating in front of their retail establishments, which would be used primarily at night when they're closed. There are, I think, a lot of ideas that need to be explored. And we have, Julie Chismus is a transportation planner. The Board of, the Department of Public Works has a traffic engineer. We've got a lot of talent, as you well know, in the city, combined with the input of the people we're trying to help. So I see, I would like you to take this back and work on it with these people and come up with, a plan that, a compromise that helps, that everybody can agree upon. So I don't know how you feel about that, but I would, I for one am not ready to vote for this, certainly not tonight. So, thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Jettie. Alderman Lopez.
Yeah, so I have very similar thoughts to what Alderman Clemmons and what Alderman Jettie have. I've heard all summer both the praise and the criticisms of the downtown parking barriers. And I think that it does represent some systemic issues that we have, which, I mean, it's been known for years that the retail climate and the restaurant climate on Main Street have very different needs. Some of them don't stay open past 5 and aren't open on a Sunday. Others aren't open on a Monday or Tuesday, and they're not gonna open before like 12 or 1. So I think there is very different needs, and there is not necessarily an integrated spirit of community, so to speak, or forum for them to interact. I know the Downtown Improvement Committee is intended to fill that need in a lot of ways, and I know that Director Cummings works on engagement activities and trying to coordinate common efforts. And I know the Great American Downtown tries to engage everybody in major street-wide events and that type of thing. But what I'm seeing tonight is a lot of unnecessarily divisive opinions where the needs of one group are being put against another, and I don't think it needs to be that way. I think if we can create a format where all groups involved, the stakeholders, have direct input and are able to express their ideas and their concerns about a design, I think we're gonna come up with a better design. And I think that's a necessary step if we're going to look at any more permanent curb cutting changes or multimodal. We can make the plans based on the data and what the community needs, but it doesn't work if the community doesn't decide that it needs it. So I think we probably aren't ready to move this forward yet. It's also worth considering that it was brought to our attention through one of our emails that this is a quote lame duck committee. I don't think we're lame ducks. I think some of us got reelected and maybe one of us had the enviable personal insight not to run again. But I think ultimately we do need to consider the fact that this would be a 3-year plan or it would be an ongoing plan. And we need to gain engagement from our future fellow aldermen as well, if it's gonna succeed. Because we can't lurch from one direction to the other. We can't try to, bend everybody to the one specific plan that benefits one group. We do need not just compromise, but insight into what different parties are looking for. I do not think COVID-19 is going away. I think the outdoor dining is going to be an essential part of our public health strategy because the same people who deny the impact of COVID or the existence of COVID or any number of nuances there are not adopting mitigation measures voluntarily. They're pushing back against things that if we don't have outdoor dining, if we don't have options for your smaller businesses to reduce the number of tables in one area so that they don't have such a high liability, then they're forced to either confront their own constituency, their own customer base, make a bold move on a very politically divided issue, or subject themselves to risk. I'm aware of at least 3 restaurants that have positive COVID cases, and that impacts their staffing levels. And I'm also not blind to the fact, maybe blind to many other things, I'm not blind to the fact that our COVID spike coincided with about when we took the barriers down, because that was the time when everyone in the state was moving indoors, was gathering with their families and their friends. Community-based transmission went through the roof. So things have definitely changed from 2020. We have a vaccine, we have the ability to get the vaccine, but we also have a herd of people who aren't necessarily subscribing to that viewpoint and aren't gonna make all the decisions that factually create the result that we would prefer. If we did, then we wouldn't be in the situation, public health-wise, that we are, where New Hampshire is suddenly leading the country in community-based transmission. So I think we need to take the human factor into the equation, and I think we need to gather stakeholder input for this and turn what is I really hope not going to be a divisive issue for the next 3 years into an opportunity for voices to be heard, for people to come together, and for us to be nimble and innovative rather than dogmatic or fixed in our spaces. So I agree with Alderman Jettie. I would prefer to table this at minimum, but I also don't want to encourage any situation where anybody feels obliged to quickly come up with last-minute plans or quick fixes or whatever in the next couple of weeks, because I think we probably are going to need to really give this a lot of work. And I think that's fair, because the role of the city is we provide the infrastructure around these businesses that we're drawing taxes from as a service to them so that they can operate their businesses. And if a small but organized group of people are this vocal about it, they're not doing it for no reason. It's impacting their business. We need to take that into account. That's information we can use, and we can use to make our plans more successful.
Director Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a couple points. I agree with everything that's being said. As I think when I started my comments, I said I looked at this as the start of a conversation. I'd be happy to facilitate a working group as suggested. It would be public, a public meeting. We would publicly notice it. And, happy to have anyone who's interested participate. And to that end, Mr. Chairman, I would ask that you appoint 1 or 2 members of the Infrastructure Committee to participate in that group. But I'm happy to work on it. I don't think it's something we would get done over the next couple weeks. I would think that it's something that we could start over the next couple weeks, but we'd also have to make a commitment that some sort of decision, either in some way, would need to occur by, I would suggest, somewhere around early February 1st, or something to that effect, because there's logistical challenges that we need to be aware of in terms of just getting, the barriers out, if we're going to paint them again, or whatever the case may be on that front. So we need to be cognizant of these logistical or operational matters. But happy to convene some folks, happy to continue the conversation, see if we can develop a compromise that everyone would be happy with. With all that being said, no one's addressed the other issue that I raised, which is, you know, again, my recommendation was only predicated on the fact that the city of Nashua needs to be ready to have more of that long-term permanent solution in hand. You cannot keep adopting the barriers year after year, whether it's 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. It's not an infrastructure improvement that you should continue as a permanent type strategy. So you really need to also give some direction as to whether you want to take on the infrastructure project that would be called for. So I would be remiss not to remind everyone that I made those part of my original comments. I think it's something that this body needs to really weigh on and decide how you want to move forward with. And again, as Chief Rhodes said, my job is only to, you know, give facts, provide options, tell you about the best practices. And that's all I'm trying to do. Economic development is a discipline within urban planning. So that's why I'm trying to help you have the best downtown that you can. Thank you.
Alderman Tenzer.
So thank you, and thank you for those comments, Director Cummings. I mean, I do see that there's a great value to the businesses and to the community as a whole of knowing year after year what's gonna happen. And so doing it like we've done the last couple of years on the fly and piecemeal is not, you know, I believe it should be more of a long-term vision going forward, whether that's 3 years or 5 years. And as I think about all the new development that's gonna come online downtown in the next 5 to 10 years, with Spring Street, with Henry Hanger, even with the Bronstein redevelopment, there are gonna be a lot more people who are gonna be on foot wanting to access these restaurants and businesses. So it makes sense to put something more permanent. I believe it makes sense to put something more permanent in place. Since we've had this discussion, I think, Mr. Chairman, it's pretty clear that the appetite of the committee is not to move forward with this tonight. I understand Mr. Cummings said that he's probably not gonna get something together in the next couple of weeks. But we do have another infrastructure committee meeting in 2 weeks if that was able to happen. But at this time, I would make a motion to table this piece of legislation for further discussion at a later date if the committee accepts it.
I will, since the motion to table is a non-debatable motion, I'll ask you the chairman has yet had the opportunity to speak, so I will recognize you for the tabling if you will give me the courtesy to speak prior to the motion.
Absolutely.
Which is a non-debatable motion. I do not have any objections to the motion to table, if that is what the committee wants. But listening to this, I kind of feel like Abraham Lincoln at the dawn of the Civil War. What I see is a Main Street divided. Shameful. It should be working together with us, with the goal to enhance a jump. Since the beginning of time, the first brick or wooden structure that was built in Main Street, as soon as there was photography, made it on the postcard. Main Street is our postcard. It is the selling point of our community. And from that, a lot of local businesses, as you know, you guys deeply respect. Thank you for doing it, being there, and that's what makes the downtown great. Look what you survived. The beginning at the mall, Upper Broad Street, you survived. You survived the Pheasant Lane Mall. And a lot of great things. So, what has really made me happy to hear is the fact of a compromise. And I really think that we can. I heard several aldermen mention the compromise. But here's where I'm going with this. Here's our option. We could table this motion and it will die on December 31st. So if you want to compromise, what are you going to compromise? It's gone. Indefinitely postpone, it will die December 31st. The only thing that could keep this discussion going that I see, and I may be wrong, and we'll probably get clarification, unfortunately, legal is not here, but by the next aldermanic meeting, which is coming up next week, is it? Or?
The 14th, Tuesday, the 14th.
Right. Now, yes, we are a lame duck board. I don't think I'm a lame duck, but those who are going to remain on infrastructure, let me give you the highlight. Infrastructure has gotten very, very busy. We're tackling some great things. As you choose and pick your community committee assignments for those that are staying in the future, be aware, I'm going to call a meeting twice a week. Not twice a week, excuse me, twice a month. It used to be twice a month, but then we got to the point there wasn't enough legislation and we culled it back. But it seems like now with some major building projects that are going on in the city, we're going to have to probably meet more, and then we're going to go back, I guarantee you, starting in January. So if your intention is to keep this going, my question to Director Cummings, is this a fluid document? If we gave a final passage, can it be futurely amended and worked on and within committee, or it can't?
No, Mr. Chairman. You'd need one to offer the jetty amendment that was last time around, which wasn't included in this language, to be able to tweak it as suggested, but also your ending session. So I would think that what would just logistically happen is this legislation would die as the session ends, and you'd file new legislation, which could be this document again right away in January, so you have a parliamentary piece of legislation to move through the process.
Right, that's what I'm concerned with. We need a...
And so, yeah, and just understood
right,
that
the wheels
this,
will go off the bus on this. We need a bus to ride.
right, so you could file this legislation again in January, understanding that it would come to the infrastructure committee and there would be a working group on it, and it would go so on and so forth through the process. That's what you would need to do.
Oh, I intend to, because I am encouraged to hear the fact and the words compromise, and I thank you for those that brought that forward and to speak about that and come up with a solution. And it is my intention, probably maybe to have it as a full committee, but I'm willing to appoint, delegate committee members. And I would encourage that it's open to members of the public, the stakeholders.
Yeah.
We got to have stakeholders. We got to have you people at the meeting to really tell us. To come up at this automatic meeting like this is great, but it's kind of like after the horse got out of the barn a bit. We need to have your input as we come up and draft this legislation, so we could do that. So, Mr. Cummings, it sounds like the only legal or best way for this particular thing would be to have the motion to table, and then to bring it back as a working group.
And if you could give me an indication of who should be part of that working group, I'd be happy to set up a meeting for next week just to kind of get it going.
It's for your information that right now the restructuring of the new Board of Aldermen is pending. There's going to be movement of chairs, and I'm hoping to remain as chair, I would appreciate your calls and letters on that, but anyways. But, yes. Well,
Just if I may just make a point to you, okay? You talked about cooperation. The city and county, we should be working together. You get $16 million of ARPA money. I've got $80 million. I can show you how to get some of that money. I can.
yes, but Commissioner Susi, there's going to be another part of the meeting, as when you were an alderman, as you know, that you do have a second bite at the apple.
I should have been invited to the table, sir, as this is COVID legislation, and if you're not going to listen to your county representative on COVID legislation, Mayor Dodd just came to me 3 weeks ago. We gave him all the time in the world. If you're not going to give me the courtesy to listen to me, we When you come looking for money, I got.
Commissioner Susie, at this particular time, I respectfully have to put you a little bit out of order. I'm trying to run the particular meeting at hand and opening up comments for just the sitting committee members. But I thank you for your opinions. All right, it sounds like.
So, Mr. Chair, if I heard you correctly, it sounds like maybe you want to wait until January before you start the working group because you have an organizational effort that you need to get through and from.
I could probably give you some names, and this thing needs to be, I am totally aware that this thing needs to be done. It's only, Christmas is coming, it's only 17 days away, and I imagine springtime's coming. If we decide to go with the outdoor dining, that's right around a couple of snowfalls away, so. Anyways, so yeah, I'll expedite that.
Okay.
I guarantee you, because this needs to be resolved. So basically it. So seeing that, I'll recognize Alderman Tenzin. Do you want to rescind your original motion of final passage and introduce a new motion? And I thank you for the courtesy allowing me to speak.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would rescind the original motion and make a motion to table O-2176.
Okay, the new motion is to table. Any discussion on the motion? Very good, seeing none, will the clerk please? A voice vote by members in the committee are all here. So therefore, I'll call a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And I thank you all, to the members of the public, thank you for coming. We did listen, and I hope as we get this ground floor of this new committee going, that you're zealous and come with us. Let's work this out. And I think it's for the betterment of our downtown. So I'm looking forward to working with your representatives on this. So I thank you all, and best of the holidays to you. Thank you. If you're leaving, we're going to go on to our regular business. If you're leaving, please limit your conversations and everything. I do, and Commissioner Susie, not to shut you off, but just to remind you, there is another portion of the meeting for public comment if you wish to stay to speak on that.
I will,
Thank you, Commissioner Susie. Okay, we're going to go back to the top of the agenda, so.
Oh, no, never mind. I have to go. I'm not, respectfully, thank you, but I will say there was our money available to move these barriers, to pay for that, to pay for lost revenue, and all of these other things. I should have been invited on the table to talk about these type of things, because there's a lot of good things in the plan. The citizens will look at that. But to show me that type of disrespect, when I get this type of money, you won't invite me to the table.
No.
Thank you. Thank you.
Commissioner Susie, you will be invited. Are you open, you want to get involved, we'll get you involved. Okay, that being said, we're going to the head of the agenda, to the clerk.
Next on the agenda, new business ordinances O-2174, prohibiting trucks on Eaton Street. Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to recommend final passage of O-2174.
All right, I'll call on Mr. Dan Hudson, of City Engineer, please. And Mr. Hudson, thank you for patiently waiting.
It's back-to-back nights. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm here too, babe.
I benefit from hearing the perspective of the residents, so I don't mind at all. So this proposal is to prohibit trucks on Eaton Street. Eaton Street has a former railroad bridge, which is now used as a pedestrian trail bridge, creating a low clearance on Eaton Street. I drove through there today just to double check. It's posted at 11 feet 8 inches. We have seen in my 2 years here, I've seen the bridge get hit twice by trucks trying to cross under the bridge that were higher than the bridge clearance allowed. So this proposal is to post it for no trucks, more as an informational thing as anything, but trying to protect against those things happening in the future, either damaging the bridge or and/or damaging trucks. Happy to entertain any questions about that.
Any questions by members of the committee? Okay, I do have one. I hate to be a stickler. A truck is not a truck, is a truck. We have fire trucks. And in the situation of fire apparatus, we're talking about times, we did route the traffic off of Pine Street one way coming in, which when, most of my career on the fire department, you could shoot Pine Street all the way out to Ledge. Now that cannot, and sometimes Eaton Street. Would it be good to probably put in that, it says on the potential orders, no trucks, but what we're trying to do is not really limit the fire trucks, but commercial trucks. Would we, I know you're not a lawyer and neither am I, although I slept at a Holiday Inn, but should we put commercial trucks in that?
Yeah, I don't object to that, Mr. Chair. The time I had, I did use to read through other no trucking ordinances, and there was a wide variety. Lots of them referenced except as required to service local residents or had qualifiers with the exception of any vehicle owned or operated by the city, emergency vehicles, public transportation, school buses. I believe some sort of qualifying language that would allow for some trucks, such as servicing local residents and or other things. Just a matter of how long you want to make it. To me, maybe the except as required to service local residents, perhaps that covers it, because that would cover service by city emergency personnel, public works, schools department, all those sort of people. So I don't know what the committee's wishes are, but I certainly would think that some qualifying language would be appropriate here.
Okay, Alderman Jettie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, if I could ask the city engineer, if the purpose is to prohibit trucks or I suppose any vehicle of a certain height from going down the streets, to make sure it gets under the bridge, wouldn't it be better to construct the language that prohibits vehicles of a certain height, whatever height you recommend, so you avoid the difficulty of defining a truck, a pickup truck is a truck, a tractor trailer is a truck. You avoid those distinctions if you just refer to vehicles of a certain, vehicles have to be less than a certain height. Wouldn't that be a better way of approaching this?
Yeah, I wouldn't object to that. I'm trying to envision what a tidy sign would be. There's limited real estate to post a sign at the end of the street. No trucks is a pretty universally recognized sign. But yeah, we could put no trucks over a certain height, maybe 11 feet or something, because you don't want to cut it super close. So yeah, that would be another way to do it. There is a wide variety of trucks. Some of the ordinances speak to no trailer trucks, no trucks over a certain gross vehicle weight. Your point is well taken. All those things. The only part of those things that's really pertinent is how tall the truck is.
Well, Alderman Jettie, if I remind you, trucks legally already have a height by state RSA, and that's 13 feet 6 inches. And Mr. Hudson, what is the height? I think it's 13 feet 8 inches.
No, well, it's the sign that's hanging on the bridge says 11 feet 8 inches.
How many?
And 11 feet 8 inches is what's posted on the sign on the bridge.
So we've had this bridge hit
Yes.
So what we're
Yes.
trying to do is eliminate any real trucks, because a tractor trailer truck has to comply to 13.6.
If I may,
Alderman Jettie.
if I may, Mr. Chairman, what I'm pointing out is what you're trying, I think the intention is to prohibit vehicles, any vehicle, whether it's a truck, whether it's a trailer, you know, anything else that you know, it doesn't really matter. What you're doing is trying to prohibit any vehicle that is more than a certain height from going down the street, because if they're more than 11 feet, 8 inches, they're gonna collide with the bridge, so
Right.
so I'm just saying, you know, prohibiting vehicles of, and I'll defer to the engineer as to what the maximum height should be. But I think that's what we're trying to do here, rather than get into a problem with, you know, whether it's, you know, is it a truck, is it a trailer, is it a, you know, a tall car, I don't know. So,
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Hudson?
May I just shed some light on one?
Sure, yeah, please.
So- Sorry, Mr. Hudson, just looking at the ordinance here, section 320-29, truck traffic prohibited, that this would be located in subsection B of that, states that with the exception of emergency vehicles, school buses, and trucks delivering services or products to address on streets in the subsections, trucks as defined in RSA 259, 115B, having over 10,000 pounds gross vehicle weight requiring shall not operate on the following streets. So, I mean, I guess my reading of that is that the concerns of local deliveries or emergency vehicles is already taken care of.
Taken care of, yeah.
In the, or we can, if we want to, include it there as well, Eaton Street on subsection B, that would take care of, that concern regarding those other trucks. It would also define what truck is, as as Chairman O'Brien stated under the state RSAs.
Yeah, well, since you read that, and I didn't see that, I'm gonna withdraw my commercial thing, because it seems to be already covered. Am I correct? Is that the way you're interpreting it?
I think we would also have to, well, yes, although I think we'd also have to include Eaton Street in subsection B, but.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
Sorry, I think we would also have to include Eaton Street in subsection B, but I don't think that addresses the height restriction that Alderman Jettie is asking about.
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chairman, I mean,
Yes,
we're
go
not
ahead,
worried, we're not worried about the weight of the vehicle, we're worried about the height. We're trying to get the vehicle under the bridge.
Right.
Doesn't matter how much it weighs, it's gotta be it can't be taller than a certain height. That's the problem we're dealing with.
Right, but as a commercial truck driver myself, I have a valid CDL license. Every truck driver is supposed to know what his height is. Okay, and when he operates a vehicle, up to 13.6. That's the highest you can go. You could go higher, but then you gotta get a permit, and then you gotta describe your route and make sure your route is clear. But that even encompasses bridges and power lines, you know? So, the thing is, right now, with 13.8, well, excuse me, whatever it is, what did you say it was, Dan, again?
It's posted 11 feet, 8 inches, but.
11 feet, it's way under what any type of commercial vehicle should do. Fire apparatus can get under there, both ladder truck and the engine. They can now, so I just wanted to make sure that we don't encumber them by doing that. But drivers are responsible. If they hit the bridge and they're too high, that's the driver's fault. He's supposed to, it is posted, am I correct, Mr. Hudson?
It is posted on both.
And that
bridges,
means,
right on the bridge.
as within the commercial driving world, that is the driver's responsibility to know the height of that bridge. before going under it. Okay, you all set?
If I could, with your permission, if I could just point out that, you know, it may be the operator's responsibility to know what the height of his vehicle is, and to recognize that if he's going under a bridge that is posted at 11 feet 8 inches, you know, that he has to know that his truck's gonna get under there. But obviously, some truck drivers have failed in that regard, and we don't wanna, you know, pin blame on people after an accident happens. We wanna prevent the accident from happening in the first place. So I think what the city engineer is asking us to do is to, you know, prohibit vehicles of a certain height from going down Eaton Street, so that he can post a sign at the beginning of the street, so they know before. I'm sure you know Eaton Street, you know, is a hill down to go under the bridge. So he knows before he goes down that street what the height is, so he doesn't go down there and all of a sudden have to stop and back up that hill. So I don't want to put words in the city engineer's mouth, but I think what he's asking is for legislation to authorize the posting of a sign which prohibits vehicles of a certain height from going down the street to begin with. And if I'm wrong, city engineer, please say so.
No, I mean, that is the concern that we're trying to address. I am concerned about, you know, you have to make your decision as you're entering your street quickly, and it's a lot easier to see a no truck sign with a symbol and interpret what that is than it is to have a sign with a bunch of text, you know, with qualifications. So once you've turned onto the street, you're in a bad way, because it's you know, goes through a vertical change, and there's houses at both sides. It's wide enough, but a fairly narrow street. So backing back out of there, back onto one of the streets, you know, you'd enter from, it would be challenging. So perhaps, I mean, maybe I think posting no trucks is appropriate. The intent wasn't to restrict service to local residents or fire trucks or anything like that. So I want to make sure we don't do that. But I think just simply posting no trucks as a starting point, I think would be a good thing. And then we can see how it goes, and/or, you know, review later if we should add a supplemental plaque of some sort with a height restriction.
All right, do have Alderman Lopez?
Yes, as the bill's original sponsor, I think you guys have covered all the ground I would have introduced, but I did want to ask Engineer Hudson if it would be possible to put the height of the bridge on the sign or near the sign when people are turning on, so they're not going down the road realizing, oh, we were serious and this wasn't something they were going to get away with, there's a bridge.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we need to do is find a way to do that. So maybe if we post this for no trucks with height restriction indication or something like that.
I could personally stencil a picture of a truck driving into a bridge. That would help.
With the top ripped off as it hit the bridge.
Okay, Alderman Tenza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I would, just looking at the language in the ordinance right now as it relates to Coburn Avenue, I'm gonna make a motion to amend O2174, so that it would read that no through trucks with a height exceeding 11 feet 6 inches shall be operated on Eaton Street between Ledge Street and West Hollis Street, emergency vehicles, local service vehicles, and school buses are exempted.
It work for you, Mr. Hudson?
Yes, that certainly does. I appreciate that. And while I was digging through my file here just because I was pretty sure we'd gone out and measured the clearance. What we measured was 12 feet 2 inches. So that 11 foot 6 inches provides a reasonable buffer. So I think that's an appropriate dimension to use.
You don't have to take the lights off the top of it.
Yeah, and would that also include the no trucks and then the 11? Yeah, okay. You good to go with that?
So how high is a school bus?
They're pretty big. I don't know. Honest to God, I'm sorry, I don't.
They are one school bus high.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're
I'll give
gonna
you
allow
2 school buses. I don't know, we could ask Evel Knievel, I don't know.
It says between 10 and 10 and a half feet tall,
Okay,
according to Google. But so far, none of them have hit the bridge, so we know that.
okay. And now we get back, circle back to the, I'll double check to make sure that number is correct with the fire, but doesn't impede the fire at, Mr. Hudson, could you look into that?
The, look into what the fire truck clearances are, or
Right.
what they need to be? Okay, yeah, I can look into
I
that.
know they're 90 inches wide, but I never figured out the height with them.
Okay.
That would be the limited thing, and can we get a report back by the time it goes to the full Board of Aldermen so we can amend it if need be at that particular time? I think
Sure.
seem to be in agreement with this, and we can push it through with positive recommendation. Okay.
Sounds good.
Any other comments by members of the committee? Okay, seeing none. We have a motion before us on 0-21-074 as amended.
Well, I believe we have to vote on the motion to.
Yeah,
amend
well, let's
first.
vote on the okay. With the motion the motion for final passage. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Since the motion, the amendment has passed, it's open to future amendments. So therefore, before us, does anybody need to read again what Alderman Tenzer has suggested? We're all set?
All set.
All set. Before us is 021-074 as amended. Any discussion? No discussion on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, Mr. Clerk, moving right on.
Next is 02175, authorizing a yield sign on Manchester Street at its intersection with Concord Street. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to recommend final passage.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next in order, Mr. Clerk.
02178, authorizing a stop sign on Denise Street at its intersection with Marie Avenue. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion for motion to recommend final passage of 02178.
Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Alderman Jettie.
I guess I should have asked this at the last ordinance as well, but through you, if I could ask Director Hudson, you approve both of these ordinances?
Yes, the yield at Manchester and Concord, that's something that I think we theorized that as a good idea, where Manchester comes in and Concord intersect next to the National Firefighters Memorial. There was no indication on which street should yield to the other, so we thought that one appropriate. This one here came via a resident request. In full disclosure, they were looking for an all-way stop, but we looked at it and didn't find that was warranted. However, adding a stop sign on the Denise Street approach to Marie Ave made sense because it's a T intersection and the stop sign merely reinforces what should be the traffic pattern. So yeah, we do support both proposed ordinances.
Thank you.
All set, Alderman Jettie?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, seeing any other further discussion on 021-78? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Opposed? Nothing opposed, motion carries. Okay. I don't see any motion to take anything off the table.
Would anybody let me if I tried to?
Pardon?
I said, would anybody let me if I tried to?
I think at this point we'll discuss it later. Thank you, Alderman Lopez. I'll open up a general discussion. Start over here. Alderman Jettie?
No, I have
Okay, Alderman Lopez.
In terms of general discussion, I realize this is way after the discussion point of the meeting. But I do think it's important that we hear from the community, but we also make sure that they feel like they're heard, because we can all read the emails we want, but if we don't make sure that they're part of the minutes, then people feel like they're going into a vacuum. And that's kind of a metaphor for, if we just do the same plan that we did last year, people, we may be listening to people, but they're not feeling heard. So I think we took a very important step today. I think a working group is going to be a very important part of that. And I just want to suggest that that working group may also be potentially a resource for some of the upcoming discussions about how to develop Main Street. Because some of the topics that were brought up, such as the fire department saying that their traffic override system is antiquated and doesn't do east-west and only does the direction they're going in, that was sort of a suggestion, I think, that we approach that. And I think, as Alderman Tensa pointed out, if we mess around with Main Street, side streets are gonna need it. So this working group could be the beginning of a group that's able to vet ideas and troubleshoot and engage the public in a way that if we try to do it through the infrastructure committee, we're gonna be here until 12, and nobody's gonna be happy or feel heard.
All right, thank you. All set, Alderman Tensa?
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess I'll just make a general comment, because I think this is probably one of my last infrastructure committee meetings, so first.
And we'll miss you.
Yeah, well, just first.
You can still come.
I am gonna zoom in. You know, and I appreciate all the work that this committee has done and that it will do in the next session, because I do think it's important, and I appreciate how we've been able to work together with planning and economic development, because I think a lot of our issues go hand in hand. So I thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. You know, just generally, you know, there were comments made, you know, our committee meetings are for this committee to take public input. But these meetings aren't a community discussion necessarily. I mean, they're here for us for the aldermen to put their thoughts on the record, so that the public knows why we vote the way we do or what the discussion is, so it happens. But I think that over the last couple of years, especially with, you know, going to Zoom and people participating more, which has been great by Zoom, I think there's been more from, you know, kind of interruption from the community during our meetings when we're trying to have these discussions. So I hope people realize that it's not, you know, if we let everyone up in the horseshoe and make comments whenever they want to do that, that it's just not an orderly way to run the meeting. We're here to kind of take care of business, you know, vote on these pieces of legislation. It's not necessarily where all of the, you know, where all of the discussion takes place. Certainly with, you know, among the aldermen it does, but, you know, it's not the only place. Other people can reach out to us directly, they can send us emails, they can call us, which Commissioner Susi has called me on various issues, and I've been happy to talk with him. So, you know, please, thank you for your input, but please realize that we would be here till 2 a.m. If the chair doesn't kind of control the input during each session. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I would just, Alderman Clay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I know I'm not on the committee, but I I want to thank you for passing that legislation of the yield sign. I have gotten more than one community member that has contacted me about how those two roads kind of intersect and the scariness of that. So it's going to take a little while for people to be educated that there's a yield sign there, but I think in the long run, it's going to be a good thing. So thank you so much for passing that and putting it through. And I also want to kind of add to something that Alderman Tenza had mentioned. I'm starting to see a trend in our committees where people are shouting things out, and we get nowhere when that happens. I had right or wrong, but I had a constituent who sent me a message. When did the Board of Aldermen meetings become the Board of Ed? It's a sad state of affairs, because when the Board of Ed had started getting unruly people, I had people saying, when did we become Manchester? I don't want to see this happen. I don't want to see us fall into that. We're not Parliament in the UK where people can just stand up and yell, including the members of Parliament. We have more decorum than that. And I think we do give the public some time. I know they feel frustrated with the 3 minutes, but they have the ability to speak before a meeting, they have the ability to speak after a meeting, and they have the ability to speak between meetings. I get lots of emails. I'm sure, as Alderman Tenza has stated, he gets phone calls, he gets emails. I know for a fact that Alderman Lopez gets a lot of people tapping him on the shoulder and say, hey, I'd like to have a discussion about this. So we are open to all of this, and I think when we start to yell at things, and I don't want to single out Commissioner Susi, but he's been through the troops before. He's been an alderman, he's been a commissioner, he's been many things, and he knows the proper decorum, and that really wasn't the right place to do what he wanted to do. He may have some wonderful ideas, I'm sure he does, but I think they need to be shared in a different manner. So thank you for letting me be heard.
Thank you, Alderman Clay. I just want to basically to get to wrap up before we get to public comment. This was night 2 of 2 tough nights. Those were with us last night, and staying, it's now 10:11 p.m. I really want to thank you guys for doing the diligence that you've done, allowing the people to speak and come up, and it sounds like we have a workable agreement. Director Cummings, be prepared. I'm going to work with you with that, and we'll get you some people. I'm looking for the public input. As I sit on this, I would like to reunify Main Street. I come here before this board without fear or favor to anything. I will listen to the discussion and try to make my decisions as best I possibly can for the betterment of the city. You may not agree with everybody, but I'll do it with the best of intentions and without malice. So therefore, I think moving forward, I think we made a wise decision this evening on the barrier thing, and we'll looking forward to working with that. To people, when you're choosing your committees that are coming, like I say, you're all welcome back.
Are you sure?
Huh?
All right, just you sure?
But there might be other assignments that might be more tempting for some of you, and I don't want to let the cat out of the bag as vice president, but some of you might be getting something else, and that's good, To my good friend Dave Tenzer, who I've known for years, it's been my pleasure working with you and, sitting on both committees, and part of the restructuring in the beginning, I think the chair of PEDC should sit on infrastructure, and the chair of infrastructure should sit on, PEDC, because the two work in unison. And so it's good to know what the left hand and the right hand are doing at the same time. So we learned a lot, and we're looking going forward. So again, gentlemen, I thank you for this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time that you spent with us this evening, and we'll work forward. Seeing no other comments, I'll move to public comment. And can you reintroduce yourself and address in 3 minutes? Thank you.
Certainly. Lori Ortolano, 41 Berkeley Street. I want to thank you, Ernie, for your thoughtful words on this downtown issue. I really appreciate it. Dave and Alderman Dowd, thank you, and Tom, thank you. So I appreciate the thoughtfulness of reconsidering this, and I appreciate the committee that you're bringing together. I would like to put my name in as a citizen to serve on that, because I've been working with the vendors, or the downtown merchants on this. And I will tell you, I have some concerns about Director Cummings chairing this committee, because I feel he is not open and as factual as he needs to be. And that is a big concern to me. These surveys that are being done, that are referenced, and I'm gonna look very carefully at the minutes on this. Director Cummings mentioned that, he conducted a survey, and by and large, these people who spoke tonight are just a minority. Well, where is that survey? Is that a public record that I can write to know tomorrow? The other thing is, Paul Shea got on with statistics. Did we give him a scope of work as a nonprofit person in charge of Great American Downtown to do this study? Where is that information, and how is it conducted? And do I have a right to get that information? Who authorized that? It seems like our surveys are very anecdotal, and they're not factually based, and they're not publicly available. And I want to see that happen. As far as the language of the legislation that was written, if Attorney Bolton had been here, his head would have blown off to hear Director Cummings state that that was written by Attorney Bolton. He has made it clear repeatedly, he doesn't put those words there. He checks for legal accuracy. The words are the words of the author, and that was Mayor Donchis. And I believe those were his words in bringing that forward. I believe that's how he wanted this, as a COVID issue. And Commissioner Susi was exactly correct. This was an Imagine Nashua thing. And when we talk about Imagine Nashua, that was a wonderful plan, collaboratively done, long-term vision. There wasn't a price tag assigned to everything. If people had seen the price tags, they might have gone, oh, wait a minute, I'm not certain we can do that now. It seems like you folks are trying to do it all at once. And when I see pictures of Norway or Sweden or Moscow and how their streets look, I wonder what their property taxes are like. Because I have a funny feeling they're not like New Hampshire. So I don't think you're listening. And it showed tonight. The reason you've had 2 long nights is because you've brought 2 lousy pieces of legislation forward. And I knew what these people wanted for the last 6-8 months. How have you missed this? Why did this legislation come in November this way? It should have never happened, but you're not listening. Thank you.
Yes.
Derek Tebow, 9 Emerson Road. I figured if I was going to be here for 7 or 8 hours the last 2 nights, I might as well speak, right? Lori forgot to mention New York City, too. Might as well use one of the American ones that the pictures showed. The last couple nights have been pretty crazy here, and I'm wondering, as an incoming alderman, if I made the right decision. And I'm kidding, of course. Ward 8, I'm kidding.
It gets better, believe me.
And I've been to these Board of Education meetings almost every week for about 3 months, and they're exactly like this, where I'm okay with people that don't agree with us or don't agree with other people. The problem I have is people coming up here and being rude. I think that's inappropriate. Attacking people that have jobs in the city, that are trying to do the right thing, whether they agree with them or not. I think that's completely rude. It's uncalled for. Incoming Alderman Sullivan last night was great. He came up, he said his points, he disagreed with the legislation, but he did not attack anyone. He just said what he needed to say. And I think that's the route we need to do. And the public comes to these meetings and, we let them speak and they get to speak, but then when you guys are speaking, I hear them behind me, snickering, making comments. Former Alderman Susi had plenty of comments to talk when other people were speaking. And that to me is uncalled for. It's just rude. It's exactly what Alderman Tenza, Alderman O'Brien were talking about. And I hope that changes in the upcoming year, because it's going to be a busy year for the aldermen. So thank you.
Thank you. And Alderman-elect Como, did you have your hands raised? Yes, you did. I'll recognize you.
Yes, thank you, Alex Como, 4 Lewis Street. I just wanted to thank the committee once again for allowing the public the opportunity to speak tonight. The only thing I wanted to add regarding the barrier discussion is I'm glad that the solution, or the resolution that we came to tonight was that it's worth talking about more, which I think we could all agree on. Whichever side of the barrier issue you fall on, I think that the misconception was that people were just anti-barrier, when in reality, I think most people that I've spoken to just felt like it was a rushed piece of legislation that deserved a more thoughtful look. And so I'm glad that the committee's taken the stance that we're going to have that further discussion. And so I once again would like to thank you and thank all members of the public that came out to speak tonight. I think it's very important that everyone, regardless of what side an issue they're on, has the opportunity to have their voice be heard. And so I'm glad that was able to happen tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving along, we'll close public comment. Remarks by Alderman. Alderman Jettie.
Yes, I want to thank the incoming aldermen for coming there. I appreciate their enthusiasm. I hope it continues. And I just wanted to say that I'm sorry that Alderman Tenza will not be on this committee next year. But even though he won't be an alderman, he could still be a member of the planning board, right?
Well, we have a downtown barrier committee that's looking for people that, How much time you got there, Ted?
Your Thursday evenings are already free, right?
Yeah.
You'll be willing to serve on the planning board.
It's Wednesday.
So, but thank you for serving on this committee, and we'll look forward to hearing from you on Zoom, but remember, you're limited to 3 minutes.
For the record, I'm not sure I've ever spoken longer than 3 minutes anyways in this chamber, so.
You know the drill, thank you.
Yeah.
Alderman Jettie, thank you. I'll second your remarks, you know what I mean? So thank you so much. And it is very good. Thank you for showing up. And Alderman Lecomo, you guys were here last night. Thank you for showing the interest. Alderman-elect Sullivan was also here, and I forget the name of the other alderman was here
Kathy.
also. Yes, thank you. Was also here last night. So it is encouraging, and looking forward to working with you guys in the future. Anything else from anybody? Seeing none. Just one little bit of housekeeping issue. We are scheduled, is it the 22nd?
22nd, yes.
Of an infrastructure. I don't know what's coming on the docket that we will get for pending legislation from the next aldermanic meeting. So, without objection, I know it's Christmas. If you are like me, I hope by now at 10:22 my wife is in bed. But usually I wait till the 24th to do Christmas shopping. So, I know it's a busy time of year and I'll take that into account. But if we do have stuff that we have to work on, it looks like we do our schedule for December 22nd. Alderman Lopez.
Yeah, just to clarify, because I know members of the public were wondering if we'd be taking it up. I did ask the streets department to maybe give us a little bit of information about the traffic circle and the flow and any safety recommendations that they would have.
Yes, thank you, Alderman Lopez. Mr. Hudson, are you still online?
I'm still here, still awake.
Yes, and this is a perfect time without an exception. Alderman Lopez, I brought your concerns up and I had a conversation to Mr. Hudson, so I'll give you the floor at this particular time. And I think that the two of you could work together to have future discussion on this and maybe bring something back, perhaps maybe in January or something like that for the new committee to work on.
Right, and that was my intention, was to say that we are working on it, that we had connected with them, but we don't have any immediate ordinances because, it's a tragedy that a woman was hit by a vehicle, but we also need to really understand the problem in order to come up with a solution that doesn't cause more problems.
As promised, and what this is, there was a lady that was hit down by California Burrito in that vicinity of the Walnut Street Oval, and that's what you're in Ward 4, and that's what you're concerned with, I'm concerned with. and I think we'll take a look at that and come up with something, as well as we should, anything that affects
Yeah, so I just
pedestrian
wanted to
flow.
assure the public we didn't forget it or miss it or anything. It's
Yeah,
just,
and I didn't forget you, of course, so there you go. So we're good, Alderman Lopez?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, almost forgot it, thank you for bringing it up. Anybody else? Okay, so now I'm gonna look at the motion of the hour.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We'll declare the Committee of Infrastructure meeting for December 8th closed at 10:24 PM. Again, thank you and good night all.
Shut this off? There we go.
so if you'd like me to